Commit to the Bit by Jessica's Pie. Commit to the Bit by Jessica's Pie. Summary. Sabine and Ezra are very committed to the bit. The bit is a fake relationship. It's a long story. Chapter 1, in which the bit is fake dating. It all starts the afternoon Ezra knocks on Sabine's door in his quick little way, then leans inside and asks if she would like to earn around 52 credits with little to no effort. When do I not? She asks rhetorically, pondering her painting. Does this need more orange? Everything always needs more orange. Obviously. She changes the color on her paint sprayer. I assume this means we're swindling someone? Sort of. What's the con? It's more like a bit. Okay, what's the bit? Well, this is the part you might not be on board with. I don't know. I do a lot of stuff for money. Try me. Ezra steps inside. All you have to do is hang out with me for an hour or two. Pfft, I do that all the time, and then not deny it if someone asks if it was a date. She twirls the paint sprayer, contemplating. Then she laughs, shaking her head. What in the universe does that mean? Certain persons on this base, whomst I won't name, have a total of 32 credits riding on me being too chicken to ask you out, and another 70-some on you saying no if I do. Why would you ask me out? She asks, looking back at her painting quickly. To get 32 credits? Not to brag, but... Ezra leans back against the wall, crossing his arms in a cocky pose. Like you, I would do a lot of stuff for money. Clearly. But why would they dare you to ask me out? Oh, petty revenge. They want to embarrass me, 'cause they're jealous they don't have space magic. They feel bad for me 'cause I've never been kissed. All of the above. I don't know. Could be anything. Sabine chuckles, going back to her painting, and mentally noting down that never been kissed part, in case she ever needs something to tease him for later. So, we commit to the bit. Fake a date and split the money 50-50. Yep. And what's this a date gonna be? I thought I'd let you choose. You mean you didn't think you'd get this far? Yeah, he admits. Let's just wing it. We'll figure out something that counts. Anything counts as long as we lie. Point. Ezra straightens up with a shrug, then moves towards the door. Pick you up at 6, maybe? Sabine glances over her shoulder at him. You live across the hall from me. How are you going to pick me up? He looks at her for a moment, then cracks a grin and a joke. Fireman Carrie? Get out of here, Sabine announces, chucking her paint sprayer at his head, and he ducks and runs with a laugh. And that's how it all starts. Ezra sits down for noon meal the next day with the group of guys he's usually with. There's Wedge and Hobby and 3 other pilots, an 18-year-old with a baby face that makes him look about 5 years younger than he is, named Casey, and then Vin and Tarek, who are annoying, but Ezra puts up with them. Pay up, everyone, Ezra says smugly, and they all stare at him. You asked her out? Casey demands. And she said yes. Hobby, who'd bet severely against him, scowls. When's the date? Last night. A voice Ezra doesn't know hoots, and then a guy maybe a year older than him sits down between Ezra and Hobby. Someone had a good time, huh? Who are you? Tarek demands. New guy, Aylin. Great to meet you all. Now keep going. This sounds like the kind of gossip I want to hear. Ezra hesitates, but figures he might as well. Yeah, we had our date last night. With who? Aylin interrupts, and Ezra gestures across the mess hall to where Sabine is sitting. The Mandalorian? Ezra nods. Aylin looks from Ezra to Sabine and back again, one silver eyebrow raised. A Jedi and a Mandalorian. History repeats, I guess. Finn interrupts before Ezra can ask what that means. What did you do? Ezra ignores the meaningful tone and takes a bite of his sandwich, mumbling around the mouthful. We made art, I guess? Six Faces gape at him. What? He asks. Casey ventures, bright red creeping up his face. Did you say art or out? Ezra chokes on his sandwich. That went from 0 to 10 really fast. Tarek grins wolfishly as Ezra coughs. Art, he gasps. Art. We painted. Pictures. And back to 0, Vin sighs. Boring. What did you do? Like I said, Art. We did some painting. Dude, that's so lame. Tarek groans. What did you do? We talked but what did you do? Hobby and Wedge practically yell. Ezra can't really pretend not to understand them anymore. Nothing. Nothing happened. And by nothing happened, you mean you kissed her and she slapped you? Come on, Broseph. Aelin grins. Tell us everything. Don't be shy. Ezra ignores Wedge's question, and Tarek's scoff, and Aelin's elbow, which is repeatedly jabbing him in the side, and looks across the mess hall, catching Sabine's eye. The girls surrounding her are absolutely freaking out. As he watches, the Togruta mechanic with the gold-striped leku clasps her hands to her cheeks and screeches while one of the pilots pretends to faint dead away. Tariq reaches across the table and yanks on Ezra's sleeve, drawing his attention. Did you at least try to kiss her? No. Hobby looks like he's in pain. Tell me you put your arm around her or something. No. Nobody speaks for a moment. So, you got a date with a girl so out of your league it's not even funny, and all you did was paint and then talk? Great! I just lost 15 credits to the lamest date in the world, Wedge mourns, breaking the silence. Hope you had fun, adds Vin with a mocking smile. That, even though the whole date was fake, makes Ezra feel stupid for not doing anything. You're never getting a second date. Sabine slides into her seat across the mess hall, greeting her friends with a smile. There's a Pantoran pilot, Gia, a trio of Togruta sisters and mechanics, Lee, Chizuka, and Kana, and then there's Morgana, who is a bit of a jack-of-all-trades around the base. Gia is the first one to speak, leaning forward with a sly grin. So, what did you do last night? Sabine must look as surprised as she means to, because Lee and Kenna lean forward. What happened? They coo, immediately picking up on something, exactly like she planned for them to. I know what she did last night. Amika, a human girl, says, coming over to their table and squeezing in between Sabine and Gia. What did she do? Chisika asks. She went on a date. Lee and Kana gasp, and Morgana demands, with who? Amika looks at Sabine and waits for her to answer. Sabine sighs and shrugs her shoulders. With Ezra. All the girls look across the mess hall at the group of boys. Right as Ezra flushes brilliantly red and chokes on his food, eyes settling on Sabine for half a second, before he looks intently away. Oh my gosh, that's so cute! Chizuka croons. He's embarrassed. I bet they're talking about you. What did you do? Yeah, start from the beginning. Morgana commands and Sabine freezes. They hadn't really worked out a cover story. Sabine's not sure what he's telling the guys, but she can see them, and they look very enthusiastic. She is not enthusiastic. So, she goes with something close to what happened. We went out, painted a little, chatted, and then went on a walk. A romantic stroll. Gia sighs dreamily. But what did he do? Amika asks. What do you mean? She huffs. Look, he seems like a great guy, but... Amika sighs, and Lee finishes for her. Guys always try something. Ammy, you've never even been on a date. Chizuka laughs. How do you know that... Seriously, what did he do? Gia interposes. He didn't do anything, Sabine says. Did he try to kiss you? Kenna demands. Guys want kisses after dates. You've never been on a date either, Kenna. He didn't try to kiss me. Just to make it seem real, though, Sabine throws a bit of a lie in. He held my hand when we walked back home. Nothing else. Let me get this straight, Kina says. You got a date with a guy so far out of your league it's hilarious. No offense. And he held your hand, invested time in your hobbies, and respected your boundaries. All the girls are quiet as they ponder this. And then Amlee claps her hands to her face and screeches. Morgana swoons across the table, and Gia starts flapping as she squeezes. Girl, if you don't marry him, I will. Sabine sighs and looks up, catching Ezra's eye. The guys around him are rioting. and she wonders if it's for the same reasons. He's a keeper, Chizuka confirms with a sentimental smile, and Amika puts a hand on her shoulder and says, "You're a lucky lady." Actually, I don't think. Sabine awkwardly tucks her hair behind her ear, looking back at the girls. I don't know if we'll have a second date. They stare at her in shock, before Morgana sits up and yells, "I get dibs." Gia smacks her. "Not yet, you don't." Then she looks at Sabine. "Why not?" I don't know," she stammers, caught off guard. I mean, besides the holding hands, it didn't even feel like a date. It felt like hanging out with a friend, so doesn't that mean, like, we'd just be better as friends? If you would be better as friends, don't you think a date would be awkward? Chizuka ponders. It sounds like you had fun. We did, Sabine ventures, quickly thinking up another objection. But I've never actually had a boyfriend before, and from what you girls have said about your exes, dating always seems to end up badly for us girls. Dumped, cheated on, ghosted. Amika pats Sabine's hand. That's because none of us could get a guy like him. Do you think he'd do any of those things to you? Personally, I think he's in love with you. Emily adds. It's your choice, Gia finishes. But listen, girl, he is hot goods, okay? If you think you want another date, if you think so at all, then get him while you can. Because Isa is going to start hitting on him the moment she thinks you're not in her way. And Sorna has wanted to get her hands on him for months already. Sabine frowns, wondering why she feels uneasy at that, before deciding it's probably just some overprotective instinct. They do, huh? She muses to herself. But the others hear and shift closer. Go get him, girl. Chizuka grins quietly. Sabine and Ezra sit at the table in the common area of the ghost and split their rewards. Sweet, sweet profit. Sabine sighs, flicking through her 52 credits and looking like the loath cat that got the cream. I'll admit, that was a pretty good deal. Were the guys bothering you too much? Ezra leans back, kicking his feet up on the table. Well, they made sure I knew it was the lamest date ever. But it was fake, so I guess it doesn't bug me. She stares at him. They said it was lame. What did you tell them we did? Basically, exactly what we did. That's what I told the girls, Sabine replies. I made up a part at the end where you held my hand, 'cause they weren't buying it otherwise. But other than that, I didn't add anything. Let me guess, Ezra says. They said you should never go out with me again. Actually, they were really enthusiastic. He squints at her. You're making that up. No, really. Something about you being romantic, but also respecting my boundaries and not, like, trying anything, or being pushy or whatever. You know, Ezra muses slowly. This might be why all the guys are single. Why? Did they think girls wanted that? She asks, looking like she's going to laugh aloud. I mean, some girls maybe, but seriously? Ezra shrugs his shoulders. I don't know. Newsflash, geniuses, Sabine sings out. Not everyone wants a bad boy. Try telling them that. He laughs, but Sabine has a strange look on her face. Ezra, she says slowly. Can you be totally honest with me? Yeah? She leans forward, propping her elbows on the table and looking him right in the eyes. Are you interested in any of the girls on the base? Any at all? No matter who? No, not even me. Ezra is a little too shocked to speak for a second. That's blunt, he blurts out, before he can think, and she winces a little. No, I mean... Ezra takes a breath, shrugs his shoulders, and is as blunt as she was. You're my best friend, Sabine. That's all I want you to be. She smiles then. Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. In that case, if there's no romantic feelings involved to complicate things, what do you say we go out again next week? He stares at her. What? Fake dating? You? Me? What do you say? We already did that? She shakes her head. No, we went on a fake date. I mean, let's try fake dating. Long term. Ezra has to think for a moment before he can wrap his head around that. Why? Sabine huffs, crossing her arms. According to the girls, the general thought around the base was that you and I were, she makes air quotes, smitten with each other, and so it was hands off. If we announce that we're not going on a second date, we're fair game. Ezra's confused. So, you mean there are people actually interested in us? Well, I knew guys liked you, but me. Ezra, have you seen yourself? She demands. You try your best to hide it, but you've got more muscle on you than most of those guys dream of having. I've even heard some girls call you, I quote, smoking hot. Of course there's girls interested in you. I'm... Ezra is a little gobsmacked. Hot? Well, that's what they said. Yes. She thinks for a second, studying his face. Ezra, even I know that, objectively, you're not bad looking. How did you not know this? How could I know that? The hordes of girls spying on you doing lightsaber forms? Did that not clue you in? Sabine asks incredulously, unimpressed by his shock. I thought that was because of Jedi reasons? It was because you weren't wearing a shirt, Dikut. Ezra's still working through this. It could take a few hours. Then, why were you there? I told you, you're pretty sculpted, and I needed to practice some anatomy sketches, she says, like it's a totally normal thing to low-key draw one's half-naked best friend, which doesn't sound right, but also, Ezra doesn't know enough about normal friendships to dispute it. Listen, I don't want to have to turn down every guy here. Maybe you'd like the attention, but I'm guessing you probably don't want half a dozen girls throwing themselves at you. Ezra is squirming already just imagining it. I don't. Exactly. That's why we should fake date. Plus, you'll get to prove to the guys that us ladies like a gentleman. Ezra half smiles. Okay, but there's one thing you haven't thought of. Oh, Kanan and Hera. What about them? He clears his throat, lowers his voice, and does a Kanan impression. Well, if you kids are going to start dating, there's a few ground rules we need to lay down. He switches to a Hera voice. Rule 1. No funny business on my ship. Sabine puffs her cheeks out. Ooh, yeah, that is a conversation I would like to avoid. We could always tell them that it's fake. Then they'd lecture us about emotional honesty and not feeling stuck in this and basically everything we already know, but more awkward. Sabine sighs and thinks, and then sits up so fast she almost falls out of her chair. We'll keep it a secret. Except it's already out there that we went on one date. Sabine has her maniacal grin face on, which does not bode well. Yeah, but knowing how bad I am at handling feelings, how far-fetched do you think it is that I might go on a date, realize I liked it, but then panic at the thought of commitment and a stable relationship, and immediately just friends the guy, then regret it and try to take it back, but want to keep it a secret because I'd obviously never admit it publicly. But if it's a secret, then no one will know. Which is kind of the point. Not a secret secret. Sabine rolls her eyes with a smile. You know, I mean, like Kanan and Hera being a secret. So, not a secret at all. Exactly. It's a ridiculous idea, but they've pulled off worse plans. Okay, let's give it a shoo, Fen Rao. Rao is standing in the doorway, staring at them with one eyebrow raised. Why he's in the ghost, Ezra doesn't know. But he's there, and he's clearly heard everything. With all due respect, which is none, he says, you are idiots. No, we're just committed to the bit, Sabine replies innocently. Fen Rao is clearly repressing a smile. You know, he says, I did a bit of fake dating when I was your age. You did! Sabine and Ezra both nearly yell. He nods once, leaning against the door and looking nostalgic. I worked as a protector for a young princess. We were friends, and she was being hounded by suitors, so she pretended to be secretly not secretly in love with me instead. What happened to her? Ezra asks, feeling weirdly invested in this story. Rao's expression sours a little. Our paths diverged. Then he shakes off the melancholy mood and steps farther into the room. Now, if you want to get this bit of yours right, then I recommend you learn from the master. Wait up! Ezra stops and lets Aelin catch up to him. He and Aelin have been getting along pretty well lately, so he doesn't mind walking with him across the base. "Hey," he greets, as they clasp hands for a second. "What's up?" Aelin huffs and runs a hand through his hair. "Okay, dude. Sorry, this is weird, but I gotta know. You and Sabine." "We're friends," Ezra shrugs. "We went on a date. It didn't work out, that's all." Aelin is staring at him really funny. "Bro," he says, "you're not the only Jedi here." Ezra stops in his tracks in shock. Aelin's force presence is dim, but it's strong, Ezra realizes. "So," Aelin continues, "now that we've established that I know you're not being totally level with me because of my psychic mind powers, you want to tell me what's up with you and Wren? Because your vibes say you like her, your actions say you're with her, your words say you're just friends, and your presence says you're lying through your teeth about something." Ezra swallows and shakes his head, lying badly on purpose. "We're just friends. Honest." Aelin stares at him, eyes narrowed. "Soor. It's been interesting, being a fake secret not secret couple. On Rau's recommendation, they talked it out together and decided on some rules for what they were both okay with doing. Mostly it's holding hands and standing a little closer to each other than normal. Only Sabine has spent a long time keeping people at an arm's length, literally and metaphorically. He never invades her space, but he is near her, and the nearness is taking some getting used to. To ease her way into sharing her space, she tries to be a little closer to him whenever they're alone, and no one is watching and making her feel awkward. And that's why, when Sabine slips into the Phantom 2, flopping down onto her back and scooting under the cramped space beneath the control panel so she's next to Ezra, she doesn't really mind that she's so close to him that they almost touch. "Hey," she says. He looks over for a second and smiles quickly before going back to whatever he's doing. She could figure it out easily if she wanted to, but she doesn't bother puzzling over it, and Sabine doesn't mention the grease spot on his cheek. "Hey," he points with his elbow, "can you hand me the thingy?" She somehow knows exactly what thingy he means. She's gifted like that, and hands it over. "Hera said you wanted to talk to me." "Yeah, about 2 things actually." Ezra looks back up into the mechanics he's working on. With a scowl, he jabs the multi-tool up into the mess, catching it on something. The scowl deepens as he pushes, trying to twist or loosen something. "Need a hand?" Sabine asks. With a growl, whatever he's trying to do happens, and a little metal piece falls out and almost hits him in the face. But it stops, hovering a few inches above his left temple. He moves one arm down, snatching it up, and smiles a little grimly. "I think I got it." He contemplates the wiring above him for a moment. "You remember Vin?" Sabine nods. "Yeah? He's been saying things about you and other girls." "What kind of things?" Ezra takes a moment to think, and his face is serious, with a trace of disgust. "I'd rather not repeat them." "Oh," she says slowly, stomach twisting as she starts to understand. "What does that mean?" "So, you know I sit with him in the mess." Ezra has stopped working on the Phantom's control panel at all now, and he lies on his back with his arms crossed. "Vin always liked to talk about, well, girls. It wasn't about you, and it was pretty innocent at first. It was more, oh, this girl is cute. That girl is cute." But then he started going further than just what he thought. He started talking about what he wanted. What he wanted to do, with the girls, to the girls. The things he was saying, they were... Ezra glares upwards. Not okay. "So me and Aelin. You remember him? He's the new guy. Half Kefar, white hair. We went to his commanding officer. Turns out, Wedge and Casey both had already tried that, but Sabine doesn't have the force. But she doesn't need it to know from the face he makes exactly what happened. Boys will be boys?" She guesses. "He wouldn't do anything about it. We almost went right to Commander Sato. But Mart, he found out about it. He suggested we go tell all the girls that Vin's had..." Ezra's face twists deeper into a snarl, as he goes back to working on the mechanics. She would offer to help, but right now she's still trying to digest this story. Fantasies about, and then abandon him to his fate. Let justice be naturally served. Good plan. He holds out his hand, and Sabine automatically hands him a different tool. I'm assuming I'm one of the girls, and this is you telling me about it. Yeah. We all split up to go talk to the girls. I said I'd go to you. Well, thank you. Sabine gives him a quick smile. That was a good choice. We'll destroy him. She starts to slide out and away, but he stops her. Sabine, wait. She does. There was another thing I wanted to talk to you about. She moves back to his side. Oh, what is it? Ezra's frown hasn't gone away. Maybe it's just gotten bigger. It's about... Okay, listen. The guys are getting very invested in us. As a couple. You mean they... Sabine pauses, trying to figure out the right words, before shrugging and going with Kahina's term. Ship it? Ezra doesn't laugh or roll his eyes or anything. I guess that's one way to put it. The girls do too. They're always going on and on about you. Emily almost fell out of her chair when I said that. Sabine remembers that she hasn't filled him in on this adjustment to the cover story yet. Oh yeah, by the way, after our date last syntax day, you kissed my cheek and I panicked and punched your arm, but actually I thought it was really sweet. Just FYI, in case anyone brings it up. Again, he doesn't reply to her statement. She hasn't seen him this agitated since he was using the Sith holocron. Oh, I know we were keeping it to just hand-holding, but the girls were really pushing to know more, so I had to give them something. If it's too much, I don't expect you to ever actually do that. And if the guys push, I don't mind if you add an extra bit like that either. He laughs, short and cold. They'd just tease me for not going for more. Bine, we've been fake dating for a while. I know Wedge thinks it's lame that I haven't kissed you yet, and Tarek hasn't made it subtle that he expected us to be at the long, hot, steamy makeout session stage of the relationship by now. Sabine feels the heat rush to her cheeks just thinking of that. Oh, nope, she groans, hiding her face in her hands. Don't need to think about that. Don't need to picture that. Didn't you hint that we're taking it slow? I did. This is taking it slow to them. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Ezra says quickly. Some of the guys have different priorities. Not Casey. He's pure innocence wrapped up in a bundle of sunshine. And Martin Johnner still think dating is stupid. But the others, especially Vin and Tarek. And Vin, now that you're my secret girlfriend, apparently he thought it was fair game to start saying things about you to me and expecting me to agree and asking me things like if we're... His voice has risen harshly and Sabine touches his sleeve. She doesn't have to say anything. He understands and untenses with a long sigh. Yeah, guess we don't need more dark side moments, huh? He mumbles, letting his arms drop down once more, and thinks for a second, it seems, about how to say it. He was implying that I've been lying about what we've... Ezra laughs without humor, shutting the panel. He must be finished with repairs, and she can see how uncomfortable he is. Sabine, come on. Put 2 and 2 together and get 4 already. I don't want to have to finish that sentence. This is awkward enough. Oh. Sabine sits up, forgetting for a second that she's under the control panel, and Ezra's arm darts out, grabbing her shoulder before she can hit her head. You mean... Oh, ick. Sabine shudders in disgust. Ugh, he needs to get his head out of the gutter. Yeah, he says, as they both duck out from under the control panels and sit up. Ezra bites his lip, then looks over, right into her eyes. Your girls sound pretty different in their ideas of us. And Vin, he's been annoyed with me for a while. Jealous, I guess. And I wouldn't put it past him to bring it up to you and say that I've said things. Oh, Sabine exhales slowly and then smiles. Well, that's dumb. You're way too dorky and awkward to do that. He smiles back at her, and, for no other reason than why not, she takes his hand. Their shoulders bump together. and she's surprised by the feelings she finds in this casual touch. It makes her want to be closer, to put her arm around him, and for him to put his arm around her, and to just be. "Hey, Bridger!" someone shouts, and both Ezra and Sabine jump as Aelin pokes his head into the phantom. She hasn't really met him yet, but he seems interesting, to put it mildly. He glances at their hands, clasped together. "Should I leave?" "No," Ezra says quickly, pulling his hand away. "No, I was just telling her about that thing." "Perfect." Aelin comes inside and drops down to sit on the floor and speaks to Sabine. "My parents just arrived, and my mom. Well, you girls should definitely bring her in on whatever revenge plan you start making." It takes a second for Sabine to even remember what he's talking about. Oh, right. Why? 'Cause she's an ex-Sith acolyte from a matriarchal society of creepy ladies who don't take any crap. She'll put the fear of womankind into that guy. Already intrigued, Sabine gives one last smile to Ezra, stands up, and slips out of the phantom, consumed by curiosity. Aelin's mom is named Asajj Ventress, and she is the coolest woman Sabine has ever met. Vin is properly cowed and possibly cursed. Even with Vin excluded from the group, Ezra's table is still pretty interested in his romance. "Seriously, what did you do last night? I saw you sneaking around." Ezra shrugs noncommittally and lies poorly. "Maybe you saw wrong?" "Come on!" Wedge cries in frustration. "Give us something." "Nothing to give." Aelin, arriving late as usual, immediately takes charge of the conversation. "How'd the date go last night?" Ezra gives him an exaggerated look of annoyance, but before he can pretend to change the subject, someone else butts in, plopping down into the seat Vin used to have. Judging from the dark locks and matching stripe, this has got to be Aelin's dad. "So, is this the Obi too?" he asks, nodding at Ezra. "Obi what?" "When A told me he met this Jedi boy who was madly in love with a Mando named Sabine, I almost thought he was messing with me." The guy holds out his hand for a handshake, which Ezra reluctantly accepts. "Quinlan Vos." "Great to meet you, kid." One of the pilots claims they saw Wren and the Jedi kid holding hands as they walked along the edge of the base. Zeb laughs aloud. Kanan shakes his head, but Hera wonders. The kids have been awfully close lately. Nothing else happens, and her suspicion begins to fade, but then she walks into the kitchen early one morning and finds Sabine yawning and shuffling around as she makes herself a bowl of cereal. It wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, not even that she's still in her sleep clothes, sweatpants and a t-shirt, except that the shirt is vibrantly orange and 2 full sizes too big. Sabine doesn't seem to realize, and Hera doesn't mention it, but she does watch the kids a little more closely after that. It's not hard to figure out that something's going on with them. The furtive glances, the casual touches, the soft smiles. She mentions it to Kanan, who shakes his head. They're up to something, but I would have sensed it if they were together. It's probably just mischief. They're conning somebody. Mark my words. Hera accepts that and dismisses her own suspicions as paranoid mom stuff and a mix-up in the laundry. It's happened a lot before, so it's not hard to believe, even when someone says they caught the 2 kids kissing because, well, Sabine's never been interested in Ezra. Hera can't speak to his feelings, if they're gone or just faded, but she knows the attraction is, at most, one-sided. Right? There's a downside about going on stargazing dates once a week, which is that Zeb has been getting very irritated about Ezra accidentally waking him up when they come back. Ezra admits this to Sabine as they walk towards the ghost through the sleeping base, and she impulsively offers to let him stay with her for the night. He hesitates, and then he smiles at her and accepts. So, after converting the bottom bunk from a seating area to its original state, Sabine reluctantly returns his borrowed shirt to him. Her wearing it may just have been part of the plot, but it was comfy, and she had no plans of returning it voluntarily, and loans him a pair of her sleep pants that she hopes will fit, then grabs some sleep clothes for herself. "Turn around, I'm gonna change," she says quickly, before the situation can feel awkward. "Go stand in the corner or something." He snickers as he does as she says, and mutters in a muffled voice, Now go stand in the corner and think about what you did. I understood that reference. Sabine mutters, yanking her shirt off over her head. I understood that reference. Ezra replies, and then whips his head around to stare at her. Wait, you understood that? Sorry. Sabine fumbles with her shirt to get it on over her head as he spins back around, hiding his eyes and repeatedly apologizing. I'm sorry, I swear I didn't see anything. It was just a reflex. Nah, you just wanted to check out my wicked abs. Sabine deadpans, telling him she's not mad without really saying it. There's an awkward pause as she steps into her pants, and then she turns around. Okay, your turn. Another moment of silence, and then, you understood that reference, huh? I didn't think that was your style of music. 5 months ago, Sabine never would have thought of telling the truth. But this bit of theirs, it makes it a little easier to trust. It's not, Sabine says simply. But my little brother went through a year of playing that music non-stop. I have way too much of it memorized. Ezra is strangely quiet. I didn't know you had a brother. Nobody does. I don't talk about him. Oh, he must know she doesn't want to talk about it. Jedi powers or whatever. So he changes the subject. What's your favorite song of hers? Sabine rolls her eyes. Not that he can see her. I don't have a favorite. You gotta like one of them. Even a little. He coaxes. Also, I'm done changing. Sabine turns around. Okay. So, there was one that I kind of liked. He raises an eyebrow at her as she trails off. Just tell me. He insists. She huffs, crosses her arms, and mutters in one word. It was the serial dating song. He stares at her, blue eyes twinkling. I feel like I've uncovered a hidden depth in your character. It's not part of my character. I was like 13. That has nothing to do with me now. Should I be worried that your favorite was the serial dating song? He teases, pretending to look serious. Considering that I'm your boyfriend, I mean, are you even taking this relationship seriously? Or is it just a fling to you? I'll fling you. Sabine mutters and turns around, climbing up into her top bunk and flopping down with her back to him. But Ezra has figured out a good way to annoy her now, and he still hasn't, and maybe never will, grow out of doing that. No. Now I really do want to know. Were you a serial dater? Shut up. Hey, tell me, how do I compare to all the exes? Even if I'm just your fake boyfriend, I gotta be in the top 5, right? I bet the other ones weren't as attractive as me. Sabine interrupts him. She means to make it sound rough, abrupt, and angry, but instead what comes out is a soft whisper that is much too gentle, much too tender. There was never anyone, Ezra. He stops talking for a long moment, then clears his throat. Huh? No backing out now. I've never dated anyone before, she says, keeping her back to him, staring at the wall so she doesn't have to stare at his eyes as she says things she didn't think she'd ever admit to him. Never even been kissed. Actually, oh, Ezra says quietly. Really? I'm from an influential family. I've always known some parts of my life would be chosen for me. My mother, she married in a peaceful time, and when grandmother chose a husband for her, she could choose the man my mother loved. Sabine swallows a lump in her throat. I knew I wouldn't have that luxury. Not with the Empire, so I stayed alone. Can't miss what you never had, right? You at least had your friends, though? He ventures. What friends? Sabine chokes, trying to sound like claws of old hurt aren't digging into her chest. The ones who fawned over me because I was rich, or the ones who left me for dead because I was slowing them down? He doesn't reply, but her ladder creaks, and she sees him climb up, and then sit on the edge of her bunk, legs hanging off the side. Ezra sits beside her in soft silence for a long time. Finally, he speaks. I can't believe this childhood trauma dump conversation started with a pop song reference. Oh, Sabine laughs involuntarily, rolling onto her back to look up at him, and he smiles down on her with his glowing gaze. Good choice, though. That one's a bop. She lets herself smile and slides over closer to the wall so there's more room for him to sit. I think my favorite part was that one line right before the chorus. The one that went like, "Darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream." Me in my dark side era, he jokes. Sabine rolls her eyes. You were a nightmare dressed like a depressed college student with chronic insomnia. First of all, rude. Second of all, okay, that's fair. Kim, she laughs, and to her surprise, he reaches out and, after a second of hesitation, he takes her hand. I'm sorry you were alone for so long, Sabine. It won't ever happen again. Then Ezra winks at her with a smirk. 'Cause you've got me, the hottest fake boyfriend a girl could ask for. He jumps down and scrambles into the bottom bunk before she can take a swing at him, and Sabine mutters threats as she turns the light off, feeling her cheeks burn strangely. When she dreams that night, she dreams about blue eyes and a familiar smile, and when she wakes up, there is a realization beating in her chest that thrills her with a giddy kind of fear. It doesn't matter, she tells herself, and gives Ezra an open invitation to crash in her room whenever they get back late. And when he offers to keep a pair of his sleep clothes in her room so he doesn't have to borrow hers, she nods and pretends that the thought of him keeping his things in her room doesn't send her heart rattling away. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Is it true? Wedge demands as soon as Ezra sits down. Ezra looks around the table, confused. Is what true? Tariq leans forward with a grin and lowers his voice to a hiss. R8 says Chopper told him that he saw you leaving someone's room this morning. Under the direction of Fen Rao, Ezra has learned to be pretty good at making things work to his advantage by now, and he rolls his eyes. Chopper is taking things out of context again. I was just saying good morning to Bine. But dude, Chop says you were... Aelin glances around, then whispers something right into Ezra's ear. Ezra spits out his drink. Gia grabs Sabine's hand as soon as she sits down. Do we need to kill him? What she means is, Amika says, before Sabine can voice her confusion. Did he get pushy? 'Cause you've told us a lot that you want to take things real slow and, heck, yesterday you were saying you've never even kissed. But now the rumor going on is that your droid saw him coming out of your room this morning. Yeah, that's just Chop causing trouble. Sabine interrupts, shrugging. We were out pretty late last night, and he didn't want to wake Zeb up, so I let him have my bottom bunk. That's all. Well, Chopper also said, Chisika hedges, flushing a deep purple color. He said that that he, Am Lee, unlike her sister, has no inhibitions about happily announcing the demon droid's impolite innuendo. At the top of her lungs, a circle of silence slowly falls around them, as her voice echoes in the room and Sabine blinks slowly. Let me make something clear, Sabine says coolly. The only pants of mine that he was ever in were the pajamas that I let him borrow last night. Now, if you'll excuse me, she stands up, leaving her food untouched. I have a droid to dismember. Thank you very much. Sabine misses the specters, now that she's on Crownest, but at least nobody here knows about the pants incident. Or about the fake dating at all. At least not until Sabine slips up. Maybe says. Not everyone in Clan Wren is related, obviously, which means there's more than a few people who set their eyes on the prodigal daughter. And by now, her and Ezra's little bit has gone far enough that she's used to pretending it's completely real. So, when the first guy asks her out, it's instinct for her to say she's not available. He's confident enough to actually bring it up at a large dinner, and everyone within earshot turns to stare, and she realizes what she said. She does her best to act natural. What? I'm young. You didn't think I'd be avoiding romance the whole time I was gone, did you? Fen Rao coughs to hide a laugh at her performance, which is not helpful. It's the Jedi, isn't it? The one from that holopic you were staring at piningly yesterday? One of the defects from Clan Saxon. Clan Wren's had dozens come in from Empire-aligned clans in the past month or so. Gasps. Lucky. Lucky, Sabine repeats. I mean, wow, you have game. How'd you get him? Sabine is slowly realizing that maybe the Jedi thing isn't quite as off-putting to all Mandalorians as she had expected. Yeah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Don't be shy, girl. Blondie cheers, punching Sabine in the arm. Be proud. You have aimed high and you scored. 'Cause, I haven't even met him. But just looking at that holo makes me She fumbles for the right words to express her thoughts and settles on smacking her hand against the table and announcing, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, "Hot dang, holy Sith spit, and may the Force be with you. I want that. Please stop talking." Tristan groans, looking ready to slide under the tablecloth or face plant in his mashed potatoes, or just straight up die so he could avoid hearing this conversation. "You think you have it bad, brother mine? Try being me." Blondie ignores him, twirling her blonde hair and kicking her feet, leaning forward on the table with a dreamy smile. "Girl, no offense, but the stars had to be smiling on you the day you got him. Is this true?" asks the guy who asked her out. "No," she says too quickly. "No, we're not. It takes her a second to weigh her options before she settles on a non-answer. Well, it's really none of your business, is it?" Then she pushes her chair back and excuses herself because she knows her face is heating up as she hears whispers start behind her. "Oh, boy." Sabine speed walks down the hall of Castle Crownest, trying to outpace the blonde girl, who she now knows is not only Clan Saxon, but Gar Saxon's own niece. She is also extremely smitten with Ezra, just from the little she's seen of him on holos. "But you've kissed him, right? What's it like?" Blondie scurries along beside Sabine, who has her helmet jammed over her head and is trying to ignore her. Is it the kind that's all sweet, like a holodrama kiss? Or is it hot? I bet he's the kind of guy who could do both. Sabine doesn't answer. He doesn't have any brothers, does he? No twins? Single twins? Single twins who like blondes? Because I'd be in Corellian heaven if... Cat. Yeah. Shut up. Okay, but all I want to know is if he's a good kisser. Sabine ducks her head and veers around a corner, almost running head first into her mother. There is no doubt, whatsoever, at all, that Ursa, 1, heard, and 2, knows who it's about. "Sabine," she says simply, "I wonder if we could have a word." After the Battle of Atalin, Ezra pulls Sabine aside and demands in a half-panic to know why Countess Wren referred to him as Sabine's significant other in front of everyone. "I'm so sorry," Sabine blurts out, looking mortified. "I had no idea she was going to say that. When I was on Crownest, we found out that there were some other clans who might be interested in me, politically, and if I already had something with someone, then they're honor-bound to accept that and back off. And they don't even have to know who it is. But Mother did. And since you were already pretending to be with me, I told her it was you. Hey, it's fine," Ezra says. "I was just confused, 'cause I thought we weren't going to tell your family. But it's fine. Don't worry about it." Her shoulders slump and she leans her head back against the wall with a relieved sigh. "Stars bless you, Ezra. I'll make sure Mother doesn't say anything else." "Actually," he interrupts a little awkwardly, it might be a good thing if at least a rumor got around that we were, serious? Because when we didn't come back with you, there were some girls who thought that meant I was a single. Or that I wanted someone to distract me until you got back, or..." She smiled dangerously. "Give me some names, Ezra. I will be happy to let them know just how serious I am about this." Ezra can't help but laugh. "What's funny?" she asks. "You? And why am I funny?" "I don't know. It just makes me laugh." Ezra shrugs. "It's just that seeing you pretend to be jealous is pretty crazy." But she doesn't laugh back. Instead, she tilts her head and looks right into his eyes. "What makes you think I'm pretending?" Words fail him at the look on her face. But then she chuckles. "I'm teasing you, Jedi boy." All Ezra can do is sputter. "That's not funny." It's late in the day on Mandalore, after a successful rescue, and only a little bit of embarrassment, and the revelation that Ezra wasn't actually bad at flying a jetpack. He just got the bad jetpack as a, quote, test of worthiness, end quote. to see if he's Mandocarla enough to join Clan Wren. Apparently, he passed with flying colors. The jetpack was just that awful. Oh, also, Ezra met Fenrau's ex-fake girlfriend, which was pretty hilarious, because Fen knew Ezra and Sabine knew, but said ex-fake girlfriend didn't know they knew, and Fen didn't know if they were going to say they knew. And for once in his life, Ezra was not the most awkward person in any given situation. It was Fen, and Ezra was still reveling in it. There is a celebration in the middle of the Mandalorian camp, and it's loud and raucous and too much. Ezra leaves for the solitude of the edge of the camp. "I thought I'd find you here," Sabine says, appearing out of the dusk. She settles down to sit next to him, shoulders almost touching. How are you doing?" he asks. "It's been a long day." She sighs slowly, closing her eyes and turning her face up to the sky. The scenery is nothing but wasteland, and the air smells faintly of sulfur, but the faint breeze is still refreshing, and it blows wisps of hair down into her face. Ezra tries not to watch her. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. Whoever they are, they're right. His heart has grown very fond of Sabine. "I heard what happened when you met my father," she says after a minute, starting to smile. "Oh, yeah, He rubs the back of his neck. "Not my best moment." Her father had asked if he was with Sabine, as in, "Are you part of Sabine's rescue mission?" And then Ezra had said yeah, he was with her, and then automatically took it back, because he didn't want her dad to get the wrong idea. And then he remembered that the wrong idea was actually the idea they were trying to get across. But then he wondered if Sabine might want to handle telling her father, and he ended up backtracking and trying to fix his words, but just making it worse until he was as confused as Ulrich was. And then he blurted out, "It's complicated." So, definitely not his best moment. Mother told him we had an understanding. "What does that mean?" Ezra asks. "You're with me." "Oh." They're quiet again. And again, Sabine breaks the silence. "Mandoa is an interesting language." It's a little bit of a topic jump, so he waits for her to elaborate. "We don't have words for love, the same way Basic does." She folds her knees up to her chest and looks straight ahead, even though now he's looking at her. We talk about it with actions. When we love someone romantically, we say, "I hold you in my heart forever." When we love them as a friend, we say, "I will fight at your side." If we love someone as a parent or child or sibling, we say, "I would know your name." That's actually where the adoption vow comes from. We say, "I know your name as my," and then whatever we are adopting them as. "Interesting," Ezra ventures. She still doesn't look over. "We have another type of love. It's not like any of the others. There's no word for it in Basic." Sabine smiles. "It's just love. It's loving someone so much we know we couldn't live without them. And it doesn't matter how we love them, but we do. To us, it's the best love. It's the one we write the most epic poems about." "And how do you say that?" he asks. "Mi bajurir verde tome," she says, and translates after a pause. "It means we could raise warriors together." "Why does it mean that?" She's looking down now. "Because raising children, it's the biggest thing to Mandalorians. So if you're devoted enough to someone that you could, not that you necessarily will, but that you know that you could, take on our most sacred tenet with them, it means a lot. I guess it would. This love is even where the words of the marriage vows come from. Not the hold-in-the-heart romantic love, but this one. Because this one means devotion, too. It means everything." She bites her lower lip nervously. It means that you don't know who you are if you don't have each other. That you're part of each other." He doesn't really know what to say, so he doesn't say anything. "Ezra?" she whispers hesitantly. "Yeah?" Almost shyly, she reaches out, putting her hand on top of his. Slowly, their fingers lace together, pressing their palms close. Then she looks up at him, and he sees something in her eyes he can't give a name to. But she can. "Mhi bajurir verde tome." The breath in his lungs leaves him, and all he can do is rasp a soft whisper. "Sabine?" "Yeah?" What you said." He's never seen her smile as wide as she does now, And then she laughs aloud with joy, and her arms fly around him, and she drags him into the first real hug they've ever had. She holds him, and he holds her, sitting on the dusty ground of a barren, bombed planet. And Ezra has never been happier. Love is love. Who is he to complain about what kind she has for him? He's yanked out of the moment as she sits backwards suddenly, and for a second he thinks she's embarrassed being caught hugging him. But they're alone still. No one's caught them at all. "What is it?" he queries. Sabine looks around, then meets his eyes, and her face is set in determination. "Okay, I'm gonna ask you a really weird question, and I need you to be honest." "Sure." "Completely honest." Ezra nods. "Of course. If I asked you to, would you fake marry me?" Ezra stares at her. "Fake marry you?" "Yes. If I asked, would you?" "Because—" She sucks in a breath of air, and he can sense her spiking anxiety. "Because you're my best friend, and if I had to choose someone to spend the rest of my life with, it would be you. And my family thinks you're great, and if we were fake married, then when I go back to the ghost, you could have the bottom bunk in my room, and you wouldn't have to share with Zeb anymore. And it would be fun, right? And when we're older, maybe we could adopt a kid, or a Padawan. And let's be totally honest, it would be hilarious for the Countess of Clan Wren to have a Jedi son-in-law, and you don't have to say yes. Obviously, this is just random and hypothetical, and okay, it's not hypothetical, but you can say no, and I'd understand, but—" He interrupts her with a touch on the arm. "Sabine." She winces and looks away, but Ezra smiles. "Commit to the bit, right?" Sabine meets his eyes instantly. "So is that?" "Yes, I'd totally fake marry you." "Really?" "Really. We've been fake dating for going on 2 years. This is just the logical next step, right?" He jokes, but she stays serious. "You don't need time to think about it." "No." "Honest." For a second, their gazes hold, and then Sabine nearly tackles him over in another big hug. "Thank you so much," she whispers, squeezing him tightly for a second before letting go. And she sounds so relieved that it makes him wonder if there's some bigger reason she wants to fake marry him. Probably complicated Mandalorian politics. "You're actually kind of great, Ezra Bridger. And somehow it took you this long to figure it out," he banters back. "Very funny." She punches his arm with a laugh, then clasps his hands and meets his eyes and smiles so warmly that he would think there was something more behind it, if he didn't know there wasn't. "So, Mandalorian wedding customs they're pretty simple. We'd literally just have to say the vows to each other." Ezra frowns. "But that wouldn't be fake marriage then, would it?" "In most cases, no." Sabine grins. "But as part of the leading family of Clan Wren, for me to be considered totally married to you, I would have to put our names in the family's lineage book. Old political custom, you know. I can just happen to forget to do that. So, that's Mandalorian customs. What about you?" "Me?" he repeats. "Any traditions from your home you want to do? Some kind of specific wedding ceremony? I mean, it is all fake, but we might as well do it, 'cause—" Sabine laughs darkly. "Who knows if we'll live long enough to ever actually get married?" "The question, do you mean to each other or separately to other people?" rises on Ezra's tongue, but he doesn't voice it. Instead, he thinks about her question. There's usually a feast with, lots of food and dancing sometimes. Basically just a big party. Mother is probably gonna throw us a Mando-style party here too. So we could do your party on Yavin, Sabine suggests. So Hera and Zeb and Chop can be there too. Sounds like a plan. Ezra grins. "Hey, can we invite all the guys who said you were out of my league and pity dating me? Only if I can paint Chopper pink and make him our flower droid." "Os, deal." It's late. Very late. Because after the ridiculously grand feast Ursa insisted on throwing for them, it was already past midnight. So they both excused themselves from the main hall of the Wren Fortress, leaving the rest of the Mandalorians, and Kanan, of course, to party for however much longer they wanted. stopping only for a few minutes at the Phantom 2 to collect a few of Ezra's things: sleep clothes, his toothbrush. She led the way through the twisty maze of hallways to her room, where she told him that he could change clothes in the fresher attached to her room, because she had her own fresher, and it was huge, with a sonic and a water shower. Ezra did not regret fake marrying into money, then walked over and face-planted onto her bed in sheer exhaustion. So he did. And when he was done, Sabine dragged herself up and went to change into her sleep clothes too. But that left Ezra standing there awkwardly, because she hadn't told him where he was going to sleep. Her bed is big enough for them both, but he really doesn't want to assume anything. She has a couch so he could sleep there, but, well, Ezra is tired, and he'd just like to not have to figure out what to do. It's her room after all. Ezra leans on the window pane, watching the snowflakes fall and waiting for Sabine to come back out. There's a bay window with a cushioned seat at the far end of the room, and he's settled there to wait. Finally, she comes back out of the fresher, and he looks over his shoulder at her and does a double take. Those are definitely shorts. That are short. Shorts that are short. Ezra's just tired. That's why he can't think right now. That's all. He yanks his eyes up to her face before she notices him staring, which isn't much better, because she's wearing a thin, strappy top, and he's never really actually seen her arms, and she's really, really defined, and Ezra is going to look back out the window now. Snow sure is pretty. He hears Sabine put her old clothes in the laundry bin, and the blankets rustle as she climbs into bed and clicks the table lamp off. Now, the only light comes through the window, from the outside lights that shine out onto the snow. So close the shades when you come to bed, Kay? She yawns, which tells him that she's expecting them to share. Ezra does close the shades, and then faces the challenge of getting across the room in the pitch blackness. It takes exactly 3 seconds for him to trip on something and crash to the ground. She turns the table lamp back on and half sits, staring down at him sprawled on the floor. Sabine grins. "Watch your step," she warns belatedly, then reaches over and flips back the other half of the blankets. "Come on, it's late and I want to go to sleep." A little embarrassed over his topple, he stands up and makes his way across the rest of the room, and once he's close enough that he can't trip over anything again, she turns the light off again and rolls over, facing away from him, and it feels horribly awkward, and yet also so normal to climb up onto the luxuriously cushy mattress beside Sabine and settle down with his back to her, tucking his feet beneath the folded back blankets and then pulling them up to his chin. He must have pulled them a little too much, though, because she pulls back. Harder. "Blanket thief," she accuses in a mumble. Ezra scowls at the totally unfair accusation, grabs the edge of the blanket, and yanks it all the way over to his side. The blanket tug of war has gone on for 10 minutes already. "I would never have fake married you if I knew you were such a blanket hog," Ezra complains, tugging the quilt farther over him. Yeah, but now I'm your fake wife, so you have to fake deal with it," Sabine replies, pulling back on it. "You're so fake rude." "That's not my fake problem." They can't pretend to be mad any longer, with giggles involuntarily slipping out of them. And Sabine looks over her shoulder at him. He's lying with his back to her, but he's looking back at her too. For a moment, they just grin at each other. But then Sabine rolls over to fully face him, and he does too. "Thank you," she says, "for doing this." "Of course. That's what friends are for. Fake marrying each other." Ezra grins. "Yeah, and fake sharing the blankets nicely? Not in a million years." "Why don't you just go grab another blanket?" Sabine asks. "I told you where they were." "Because this one," he replies, tugging it farther over him, "is already warm." "But it's also mine," Sabine argues, pulling it back. "And I'm wearing shorts, so I'm colder than you anyway, so I should have more of the blanket." Wasn't one of our fake vows something about sharing all?" She scowls, and Ezra grins smugly, like he knows he's got her. Then he rolls over, giving the blanket one last lightly spiteful tug. "Oh, that's it." She grabs the hem of his shirt, yanks it up, and plants both of her ice-cold feet right in the middle of his back. He shrieks. He also falls right out of bed. Sabine shoves the blankets off and scrambles over to look down at him. "Oh, Ezra! Easy, are you okay?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I'm fine," he says, climbing back up onto the bed. "New idea. If I move 6 inches to the left and you move 6 inches to the right, we'll both be closer to the middle, and there'll be plenty of blanket to go around." "I think you just want to snuggle me," Sabine accuses playfully. He chuckles too. "Well, you did say you were cold." On impulse, Sabine reaches out in the dark, fingers brushing his arm. Once she's found him, her grip tightens, and she pulls him right to the middle of the bed. One arm goes around him as they land on their sides, facing each other. Before he can react, Sabine pulls the blanket up the rest of the way over them, burrows against his chest, and yawns sleepily. She can feel how his body is stiff with surprise and maybe a little bit of panic, and she wonders again if maybe he still likes her. But it doesn't matter. She tells herself again, as his arm slowly settles around her, and he holds her close until he finally falls asleep. Unable to resist a single second more, she slips her hand out from under the blanket and lightly touches his jaw with one finger. He doesn't even twitch. Slowly, Sabine's touch travels farther, feeling the raised ridges of his scars and the surprising softness of his lips. "Good night, Ezra," she breathes, barely putting sound to the words, so quiet that even she can barely hear herself. Good night, ne'er redur. Good night, my husband. Do you want the good news or the bad news first?" Hera narrows her eyes. "You've been back here 3 minutes and there's already bad news? Spill." The two kids share a guilty look. "You missed the wedding," Ezra says. "What wedding?" "That's the good news," Sabine chirps, grabbing Ezra's hand. "We got married." She sighs, shoulders slumping. "Very funny, kids. I almost believed—" Kanan puts a hand on her shoulder. "They're not joking, Hera. They got married the Mandalorian way on Mandalore. We had a feast on Cronist, and they're hoping to do things by Lothal tradition here, so the rest of you can be at the party." Hera looks wildly back and forth between the kids, who by all accounts do look as happy as a pair of newlyweds, and Kanan, who looks completely sincere. The only thing Hera can do is to cry out in exasperation, "I leave you unsupervised for 1 week." Chapter 2, in which the bit is fake marriage. Sabine comes very close to having a heart attack when she wakes up and finds an arm wrapped around her and a warm body pressed against her back, and she looks behind her in sleepy confusion to see who it could possibly be. It's Ezra. Ezra is here. Ezra is in her room. Ezra is in her bed. Ezra is snuggled up to her. Ezra is her husband. Right. She'd forgotten about that. With a sigh of relief, she settles back into her original position and tries to go back to sleep. It's still pretty early. She could easily get another 3 hours of sleep, but she can't seem to relax. Maybe it's the way Ezra's arm is draped over her side, or how his breath softly tickles her neck, or how she is pressed close against him, or how their legs are tangled together. But suddenly Sabine has to get away, or else she'll go insane. She gently slides out from under his arm, peels her side of the blankets back and sits up, letting her legs hang over the edge of the bed. The cool air makes her shiver. Looking back at him quickly to make sure she didn't disturb him, Sabine feels the desire to again reach out and caress his face. She's never doubted that he's attractive, at least not in the last few years. But this is something more than that. Something special, just for her. Other girls had ogled him as he went through lightsaber forms half-dressed and, well, okay, maybe she had too. But other girls haven't woken up in his arms. Other girls haven't seen his messy hair splayed across their pillow. Other girls can't call him their husband. Sabine frowns, and her stomach twists as she corrects herself. He is her fake husband. She cannot let herself forget the difference. Sabine watches his sweet, sleeping face and sighs. Does she wish it was real? Even if I did, there would be no point in thinking about it. because there's nothing I can do to make it real. Sabine dismisses and turns away, looking around in the faint dimness of early dawn, seeping through the curtains. Her childhood bedroom is just like the rest of the clan's fortress, mostly monochrome shades with touches of color here and there. One full wall is windows with a glorious view. The rugs on the floor are thick and lavish. Her bed stands on a dais-like platform. Its silk sheets, as white as the mountain snow, shimmer like water in the low morning light. And then there is Ezra, the not-so-smooth-talking street rat, the awkward loath boy that used to be so smitten with her, the scruffy orphan, the Jedi. Ezra does not belong in the picture window and watered silk world that Sabine was born into. He does not belong here, she thinks again. He is too Jedi to be Mandalorian. He's too much of a street kid to be nobility. He is too deep inside her heart to be anything but hers. Stars. She loves him. Sabine thinks he might be the most priceless part of her life. She could do without the comforts and the riches. She knows that because she has done without them. But she cannot do without Ezra. Her fingers prickle with the need to do something, and she slips over to reach her bedside table, opening the drawer, glad that she stashed her secret sketchbook here. She flips the book open and skims past pages and pages of Ezra. There's a reason that this sketchbook is secret, until she gets to a blank spot. She fishes a pencil out of the drawer, too, and starts to draw. Gee-need. His face starts to take shape with a few lines, and Sabine smiles. His hair, she darkens in, adding a bit more fluff and wave to it than it has now. Then she moves on to his body, hidden under the blankets, but the form revealed by the way they drape. Sabine's heart skips a little as she sketches out the details of his face, like she's done so very many times before. After all, this little book of Ezra had started nearly 4 years ago. Not as a project of admiration, but as practice drawing realistic faces. She'd picked him out as the easiest one in the crew to bribe to sit still for her, and had promised him that if he sat still and let her practice drawing him, she'd give him the first decent picture she did of him. I never did give him a picture, she realizes. There are plenty of decent pictures of him in here now, and more than a few slightly indecent ones as well. She'd done a lot of shirtless anatomy studies, but she doesn't want to give him any of those. She'll figure out something else. She looks at her drawing and does a double take. Somewhere along the line, she's added herself into it. See, in the picture, she is lying beside him, facing him. Their hands, peeking up out of the blankets, are clasped together. Slowly, she smiles. They are one. Sabine finishes the sketch until it's perfectly rough, and in little letters at the bottom she writes, "My Jedi and I." Then she puts the notebook away and looks back at Ezra, and her heart throbs with need. She wants to see him look at her, hear his voice, listen to the words that never say everything she knows he wants to. Sabine barely resists the impulse to bend down and wake him with a soft kiss on his temple, his cheek, maybe even his lips. But he needs his sleep, so she just reaches out and tucks the blanket around his shoulders, then lies down at his side. The sheets are cold, and Sabine slides a little closer, seeking her old warm spot. That warm spot has started to cool by now. But it's okay, because even in his sleep, Ezra is snuggly. As soon as she gets near, she finds herself wrapped up in his arms all over again. She closes her eyes and rests peacefully. Ezra wakes up with Sabine sleeping in his arms. Emotions swell in him as he feels her breathe, and he closes his eyes and reaches out with the force. Her presence is smooth and peaceful, not like the Sabine that everyone knows. Not like the Sabine he'd known up until not long ago. The side of her that is gentleness and softness and goodness is reserved for very, very few people. And somehow Ezra has become one of those people. He knows Sabine, he thinks, snuggling closer to her and feeling her lean against him. Maybe he doesn't know her in every way, and maybe he'll never know her in every way. Maybe he'll never know how it is for her to love him the way he loves her. And before, Ezra might have been disappointed by that. But Ezra knows her heart, and in this moment, that everything he could have asked for. The newlyweds arrive for breakfast nearly 20 minutes after Ursa sends a droid to wake them up. Usually Sabine is the first one awake, but not today. They shuffle into the family breakfast room, and Alric sees Sabine's face soften into a look of pure happiness when she sees the 5th place set there, right beside hers. Ursa nods to them, and Alric smiles encouragingly at his new son-in-law, who hesitates. "Sit down, son," he says. "There's no need to be shy. You're part of our family now. You're part of our family now." Tristan, who is sitting next to his father, repeats in a sullen, high-pitched mumble and pokes at the generous helping of fresh fruit on his plate. Strange. Tristan hadn't seemed annoyed about this the night before. Ursa narrows her eyes at him. "Tristan, would you care to repeat that out loud?" Tristan gives Ezra a big, sarcastic smile as the Jedi sits down at his place. "Ubiquitous welcome to the family, bro." Ezra glances nervously at him. "Thanks, bro?" "Ignore him, love," Sabine says, taking each dish from the center of the table and helping herself, then offering it to Ezra. Now Alric sees that same joy on Ezra's face as he'd seen on Sabine's moments earlier. Tristan squirms uncomfortably at their affectionate displays, and Ursa frowns at him. "Tristan, is there an issue?" "No." He scowls. "Tristan," Ursa repeats in her no-nonsense mother voice. "It's nothing," Tristan whines. "Seriously, Tris," Sabine says, making a face at him. "What's your problem?" He mumbles and grumbles, and finally asks how long Sabine and Ezra are staying. "Way to change the topic," Sabine says, unimpressed. Ezra takes it a little better. "Are you trying to get rid of us or something?" he asks with a grin. Despite his awkward hesitation at the beginning and his apparent shyness, it seems that he's completely incapable of being annoyed or upset. In fact, he's nearly glowing with happiness, especially whenever his eyes wander over towards Sabine. Alric wonders if that's what he looked like the day after his wedding. Ursa smoothly guides the conversation away from Tristan's unexpected sullenness, and they discuss their plans. They will stay one more day and then leave tomorrow, and the arrangements to be made. Abruptly, Tristan stands up and mumbles, "Excuse me," then heads for the door. Alric sees Ezra give a worried look to Sabine and whisper, "Was it something I said?" "Don't worry, he's just having teenage boy angst or something," Sabine dismisses. Ezra stares at her. "Teenage boy?" he repeats. "He's a teenager?" Sabine gives him a funny look. Yeah? I thought he was older than you." Sabine gapes. "But I told you he was my little brother." "I forgot. He's really tall, okay?" Tristan leans back in the doorway. "You thought I was older than Sabine?" he asks, looking delighted. "Okay, I like you." Then he points to Sabine. "You're on thin ice." Alric and Ursa share a long-suffering look. It seems like today is simply going to be one of those days with their children. "What did I do?" demands Sabine. "Oh, I think you can figure it out." Sabine blinks a few times. "What?" But Tristan has turned around and stomped out, leaving the rest of them in confusion. Sabine shrugs and starts talking about showing her husband the art gallery. Kanan knows the kids' marriage is pretend. He knows their dating scheme has been a fake since day one. How does he know? Because that's exactly how he and Hera got together, too. A mission gone wrong. A cover story that they were a little too committed to. And boom! Non-annullable marriage certificate. They'd rolled with it. It started as their joke, back and forth, calling each other pet names and acting like a married couple. But after a while, it had started to feel real. And then it was real. Kind of. Kanan isn't metaphorically blind. Even if he is literally blind, he knows how Hera feels about him. It's kind of hard not to know, considering their current relationship status. But she hasn't said anything. Actions may speak louder than words, but words can say a lot too. Kanan will be patient. After all, he needs to set a good example for Ezra. And Kanan is fairly sure it'll take at least 5 years, and possibly a child, for Sabine to admit that she's actually in love with her husband. "Mr. Jedi!" Ezra and Sabine both stop and look back at the trio of children, 2 boys and a girl, running up to them. Ezra points to himself, questioningly. "Mr. Jedi," says the kid in front, a little boy, maybe 9 years old. He's holding something behind his back. As he speaks, Ezra steps towards him and crouches down, so he's looking the kid in the eye. Something about seeing him with the ad-e case makes Sabine's heart patter a little faster. So, since you got married, you're kind of Mandalorian now, but you don't have any armor, so we made you this." The kid reveals what he's been holding behind his back. It's a Mandalorian helmet made out of flimsy board. Ezra lights up. "Oh, for me? Really?" The children titter bashfully as he takes the helmet and puts it on his head. "How do I look?" "Silly," giggles the little girl. "You look like a Mandalorian now," proclaims the leader of the three. "Yeah, Ezra," Sabine teases. "You'll fit right in." He turns his head to grin up at her, and he looks so absolutely ridiculous that it takes quite an effort not to laugh. Ezra sends the kids off with thanks and high fives, and Sabine barely hides the smile she knows is trying to shine on her face. As they start walking along again, Sabine clasps her hands behind her back and clears her throat. "I didn't know you were good with kids." "Neither did I." Ezra replies jokingly. "It might be nice to have some. Someday," she says nonchalantly. "I mean, adopted, obviously." She sees out of the corner of her eye that Ezra had almost fallen over his own feet. But now he regains his balance and tries to play it cool beneath his flimsy board helmet. "Yeah, that would be nice. Adopted kids. Someday." Ezra is expecting a night of peaceful, exhausted, deep sleep after a day of fun that ended in a 2-hour-long snowball fight. He's also expecting more than a bit of cuddling. They're both still cold from their time outside. He's not expecting Sabine to wear another skin-showing outfit. Isn't she still chilled too? And he's really not expecting to wake just an hour or two after they'd gone to sleep and see Sabine sitting on the edge of the bed, silently shaking. "Spine?" He yawns, half rising. She speaks in a raspy voice. "Go back to sleep, Ezra." But Sabine is distressed by something, so he sits up all the way and slides over to sit behind her. Hesitating for only a second, he reaches out and smooths down her mussed hair, combing through it with his fingers. She leans into his touch with a sigh, tilting her head back. Last night, the top she'd worn was slimly cut and fit tightly, but this one is loose, draping down over her curves instead of clinging to them. But the straps are even thinner, and the back and front are both kind of low, so it's still not exactly the kind of thing Ezra would expect a girl to wear, while she's sharing a bed with her platonic best friend that she's fake married to. He wonders, briefly, if she's at all aware of that, and if she might actually be trying to tease him. But those thoughts do not matter, because Sabine is upset and he wants to help her, if not to feel better, at least to feel put together. He knows she hates feeling messy. Her hair is short, so it's easy to smooth out, and when that's done, his hands drop to her shoulders. Those thin straps are both twisted, and one is drooping off her shoulder completely, so he adjusts them to sit right and tries not to think about how his hands are brushing against the bare skin of her shoulder blades. Then, Ezra whisks an extra blanket from where it was folded at the foot of the bed and, a little clumsily, arranges it around her. She reaches up wordlessly, gripping the blanket to pull it shut around her shoulder, and then her eyes settle on Ezra as he braces himself up on one hand and leans over so she can see him. "Who taught you to be such a good husband, Ezra?" she whispers. The question makes his heart speed up, and he chuckles nervously. "I don't know. I'm mostly making this up as I go." They stare at each other for a moment, and then he speaks again. "Are you okay, Sabine?" he asks. "Yeah," she whispers, turning away. "I just had a dream." Ezra wonders if that dream was about the Duchess or something else, but he doesn't ask. "What can I do?" he asks. She gives him a tiny shake of her head. "You've done enough, Ezra. You can go back to sleep." "How?" he blurts out. When she looks at him strangely, he clears his throat and elaborates. "I mean, how can I go to sleep if you're upset?" Sabine stares at him, then rolls her eyes. "Don't be sappy," she scolds, "and go back to sleep. I can take care of myself." Impulsively, he slides an arm around her back and another under her knees and half lifts, half pulls her back into her spot. She yelps in surprise, but doesn't push him away or sit back up, bracing himself up on one arm beside her as he pulls the blankets back over them. He says, "We can take care of each other. Fake marriage involves teamwork, right?" For a second, a look so tender it's heart-stopping shines in her eyes. But then she huffs, a little smile on her face, and sits up. "You're impossible. Isn't that why you married me?" He quips. "That and all my other outstanding qualities." "Yeah? What qualities?" "Well, I'm super hot," Ezra drawls, then ducks as she takes a swing at him. "And my personality is irresistible. And yet here I am, resisting it." Sabine yawns, acting unimpressed. "Try again." Ezra thinks for a moment, then grins and shrugs. "That's all I've got." She smiles back at him, but a little gentler than before, and a few long seconds of silence go by. "You're kind." Ezra freezes. "Huh? You're kind," Sabine repeats, still looking up into his eyes. "You're noble. Sometimes you're funny. You've always seen me for who I really was. You tried to learn about art for me. You've been there for me whenever I needed it. You were my friend, even when you thought you never had a chance at being more. Or fake more. You know what I mean." She looks away for a second in awkwardness, then looks back up at him. He hasn't moved a muscle. He's too shocked to do anything at all. "That's why I married you, Ezra." Her gaze is so gentle, so kind, so sweet, so full of affection. And he desperately wants to whisk her into his arms and kiss her for looking at him like that. The suddenness of the wish scares him. He wants to kiss her, but he can't. He can't kiss her. He can't let himself even think about kissing her, or anything else. Because that's the kind of thing the guys would think about, isn't it? That's the kind of thing Sabine hates. He nervously pushes back the impulse and tries to smile. "So it really had nothing to do with my good looks, huh?" She shoves him, and he shoves her back, and soon they're both giggling like children. And then she tackles him, and it's all chaos from there. She has him in a headlock, and is roughly ruffling his hair, while he tries to tickle her sides, so she lets him go when there's a loud banging on the wall behind them. "Can you two shut up?" Tristan hollers. "Sorry," Sabine yells back, letting Ezra go and giving him an apologetic smile. "Tristan has the room next to mine. We'd better quiet down or he'll be a bear tomorrow." She makes a funny face at him. "You know how teenage boys are when they don't get their sleep." "Oh, this..." He rolls his eyes, and they take a moment to straighten out the rumpled blankets. In the process, he bumps into her, and she immediately bumps him back, harder, and Ezra looks at her and meets her eyes, and they both start giggling again. She shushes him, and he shushes her, and they both giggle harder, and it must be too loud, because Tristan speaks up again. "You leave me no choice," he yells, and then there's a pause, and music starts playing, very loudly. "If I have to hear you, you're sure as heck gonna hear me." Ezra can't help a snicker as he recognizes the song. He really was into that music, wasn't he? Sabine gives him a fatalistic, resigned look. He had a 7-hour-long playlist of nothing but her songs. Wow, that's dedication. Sabine narrows her eyes at him. "Stop it." "Stop what?" Nodding your head to the music. "What? It's catchy." Ezra gives her a cheeky smile and starts to bounce a little to the beat too. "I could sing it if you want." "Oh, stars, no." She huffs, which obviously means he's going to sing it. The lyrics kick in, and he holds up a pretend microphone to his mouth and starts singing. Sabine sighs and flops down onto her back, dragging a pillow over her face as he leans towards her, still singing. "You know the lyrics pretty well, don't you?" she asks, narrowing her eyes. Ezra does not answer the challenge, because that would mean admitting that he, too, has a several-hour-long playlist, and he is not going to admit that. Ever. He jumps up as the chorus starts, standing on the bed and striking a dramatic pose as he belts out the lyrics. "You're not funny," Sabine says, smiling. "Because he's funny." He winks at her and keeps singing. "I can't believe I married this idiot." Actually, Sabine can definitely believe it, because 7 minutes ago, She was sick to her stomach and nearly shaking from the worst nightmare she's had in years. And now she's laughing at this dork of a Jedi as he strikes pose after dramatic pose, singing at the top of his lungs. Ezra just does that kind of thing. And you know what? He has a pretty good voice. Sabine smiles up at him, then grabs the blanket he'd put around her before and wraps herself up and sits, leaning back against the headboard, and watches him make a lovable fool of himself. A smile pulls at her face. Ezra is doing his best to sing both parts of the song at once, but he's struggling. She could jump in and help. She does know the lyrics to the chorus. Nah. She likes this better. The song ends and he wheezes a sigh, breathing heavily and grinning as he sits beside her. So, how did I sound? Sabine is in the mood to fluster him a little. Obviously. Why else would she be wearing this outfit to sleep in the winter? A girl could swoon over a voice like yours. He stares at her, then narrows his eyes. You're teasing me, she would reply. But then, from Tristan's room, she hears new lyrics start. Is he playing more music? Ezra asks. I told you his playlist was 7 hours long. He stares at her in shock. This is the playlist? Yeah, we're not going to be sleeping tonight, Sabine says, resigned. Ezra takes a moment to let that sink in. Oh, that's no good. Nope, Sabine sighs. It's going to be a long night. He sprawls out on his back next to her as the song plays on, humming snippets here and there. Your ceiling is boring, he says, after another song has started and ended. Yeah, Sabine shivers a little. She's still cold from their time outside that evening. The smart thing to do would have been to take a hot shower, but she'd been counting on Ezra Snuggles to warm her up. But with this music going on, she doesn't think a night of sleep is on the agenda. She unwraps herself from the blanket and stands up, checking the clock and seeing it's barely midnight. I'm still pretty cold from being outside in the snow, she says, walking over to her drawers and getting a pair of sleep clothes that cover a little more skin. Unfortunately, she'd really been hoping he might actually check her out a little tonight, but he's been respectfully keeping his eyes to himself, which she appreciates and doesn't appreciate at the same time. I'm going to take a shower and warm up. You know, I'm cold too. Ezra agrees. I might take one when you're done. She gives him a thumbs up and goes into her bathroom. Sabine has a regular sonic shower and a water one, and she sets her clothes on the decorative table and grabs a towel and sets that out too. And she's about to turn the water on and strip down when she looks over and sees her tub. It's hidden behind a half wall at the back of the room and is made from the same tile as the floor and the walls. It has jets for bubbles and lights, and a long soak in a hot bath would be really nice right now. Impulsively, she puts the plug in and turns the water on, adding a generous amount of bubble bath. Treat yourself, Sabine, she thinks, and decides to go full out. Her basket of bath bombs is in the cupboard where she left it, and as she takes it out, she also spots some candles behind it, as well as the remote for the string lights she put up. She carries one of the little decorative tables over to the side of the tub and sets the things down, then freezes. Ezra. She forgot about Ezra. He wanted a shower too, and now she started running a bath, and he'll have to wait a lot longer, and the tub is definitely big enough for both of them. Sabine huffs, blowing a raspberry, and wonders how she could possibly make the suggestion without sounding like a total weirdo. Meh, she'll wing it. She marches to the door and looks at Ezra until he looks at her. What's up? He asks. She stares at him. He looks at her. Want to take a bath? She blurts out. Huh? Okay. Bad start, but she can salvage this. Not in a weird way. She elaborates, smoothly, like a pro, in a normal way. Ezra opens his mouth and flounders for words. What in the galaxy would be the normal way for us to take a bath together? He finally asks. Sabine can do this. She can do this. She can do this. She can do this. She gives him a grin that's meant to be reassuring, but is really just panicked as she fishes for something to say and ends up saying weakly, 2 besties, chillin' in a bathtub, 5 feet apart 'cause we're not in love? Sabine is never going to open her mouth again. Ezra stares at her. He sighs. He rubs his face with his hands. He gives her a pained look. You haven't thought this through at all, have you? Sabine takes a breath and pulls herself together. You're right. I'm sorry. It was a ridiculous suggestion, and I wasn't thinking about the implications or potential consequences. Disregard this conversation and forget it ever happened. Except, that's not what she says. It's what she wants to say, but what she actually says is, I have bath bombs? A long moment of silence follows. She experiences all the regret. Then, Ezra kicks off the blankets and slides out of bed. Criffet, I'm in. Oh, my force you are. Actually, no, Ezra says, backing up, then hesitating again. Well, yeah. No, bad idea. Really bad idea. Sabine, you do get that this is a bad idea, right? I know it's a bad idea, she opens her mouth to say, but instead she says, I also have bubble bath. Seriously? Are you trying to make our fake marriage become impossibly awkward? There is no way that us hanging out while not wearing clothes would not make things awkward for the rest of forever. No, I was thinking we could wear swim clothes, Sabine interrupts. He gives her an annoyed look as his shoulders slump, tension leaving them. You couldn't have started by mentioning that, he asks flatly. Oops. He and Sabine sit on the edge of the tub, feet dangling in the water as they wait for it to fill. It's really big. There's a partial wall hiding most of the back section of the room, which is why he didn't see it before. And then another half wall, about 3 feet high, that connects the partial wall to the very back wall. The space that it forms is about 5 feet square, and that's her tub. It's almost more of a pool. But he's not being nitpicky. They each have a big, fluffy towel wrapped around their shoulders like a blanket to keep them warm, while they wait in companionable silence. A thought pops into Ezra's head, and he chuckles. She looks over at him. What? She asks. He huffs to himself. I was just thinking what the guys would say if they knew about this. Knew about what? Sabine challenges. He gestures around them as he speaks. The bath, the candles, the mood lighting, the romantic music. Romantic music, she repeats. This is a breakup song from a playlist called Taylor Swift's 129 Best Songs. According to Tristan, the last song was romantic. Ezra shrugs. Still, my point stands. I can just hear Aylin's voice in my head saying, he does an Aylin impression. Bruh? Sabine laughs and looks down, shaking her head. In the shine of the dusty little light strung up above them, and the faint gold glow of the dim sconces set in the wall, she is breathtaking. The girls would freak out too, she says. Gia would demand to know if I was at all cool with it. She dated Vin once, you know, and he wasn't very into respecting boundaries. So she's doubled down on it. I don't blame her. Amika and the Togjikas would start flapping. Tog what? Ezra asks. Togikazi, little Togrutas, Amli and Kehena, she explains. And Chizuka would be unnecessarily scandalized, and Morguna would ask what your abs looked like up close. Oh, is she curious about that? He shrugs his shoulders and grins. Are you planning on reporting back? Sabine kicks her feet, splashing the water. Would you tell the guys what I looked like in a swimsuit? Of course not. Then what makes you think I'd tell the girls about you? It's a fair point, and he acknowledges it with a nod. She continues speaking. I don't do double standards, Ezra. If I wouldn't want you to do something to me, I wouldn't do it to you. Simple as that. Then she leans over and turns the running water off. The tub is full, and she unwraps her towel from her shoulders, sets it on the table and slips into the water. He follows her, and the warmth is wonderful. He'd still felt a little bone-chilled, and it's like the heat is slowly soaking through him. No, as soon it sides. Hey, Sabine says. Check this out. Then she presses a button on the water temperature control panel, and bubble jets whir to life. She must have already put bubble bath in, because almost instantly, the surface starts to be covered with a white foam. Ezra laughs with delight, and she smiles back at him. I haven't had a bubble bath since I was like 7, he says. That makes me feel bad for you, she replies, swishing one arm over the surface so the bubbles flow in swirls and twists. But at least now you can live in the lap of luxury, right? Until tomorrow at least. Then we're leaving. Sabine hunches her shoulders down so that the water is up to her neck, just a head poking out of a layer of bubbles. We can come back later. When all the fighting is over, we could even live here, if you wanted. Though, I am the heiress to this clan, she says, slowing down a little and looking away. I'll have to live here, but Mother's not planning on dying anytime soon. So by the time I inherit, maybe the bit will be over by then. He looks away too, pressing his lips together and nodding once. Yeah, maybe. When she speaks, her voice is low and uncertain. Do you want it to end? No, he answers without a second of hesitation, and she smiles at him. Me neither. I could spend my whole life with you, he confesses. He wonders if it's too much. Besides the not romantic love confession, they've never really talked feelings, and he's worried she'll take it the wrong way. But she drifts a little closer to him in the water and raises a hand to rest on his upper arm as she admits in the same earnest way, I'd like to spend my whole life with you. As Ezra smiles at her, he looks into her eyes, and she looks back. Ezra can feel the currents of the water flowing around them, and the steam rising between the bubbles, and the way Sabine's hand squeezes a little, her fingers tracing the curve of his muscle. He hears the rumble of the jets and the music in the background, a slow, sweet song now, and the sound of Sabine's breathing. He smells the sweet flowery scent of the bubble bath. He sees Sabine. Gathering his senses, he pushes himself away from her, putting space between them. Change the scene. Change the mood. Make this feel normal. Don't be weird. If you were a Taylor song, what one would it be? He blurts out. Smooth. Real smooth. She stares at him with one eyebrow raised in amusement. What makes you think I have enough knowledge of this music to answer that question? I assume you know from Tristan. Sabine laughs, shaking her head, then looks up at him through her damp bangs. At the moment, she asks, then smirks slowly. I'm feeling mastermindish. I feel very flattered, Ezra says, because he does not know what to do with Sabine potentially flirting with him. Was that flirting? It feels like flirting. I was gonna say you're on your own, kid, but now I feel like I should pick a love song. At least something that doesn't make me sad for your childhood. Sabine agrees. But we agree that the specters are long-lived, right? You've never been more right about anything in your life. Ezra gives her a smile and a laugh. You know, forget the guys. I'd love to know what 14-year-old me would have said if he knew that. One day, you and I'd share a bath with all the candles and lights and everything, but, also be talking about pop music. Well, I know what 16-year-old me would have done, Sabine says, then grins. She'd have punched you in the face and possibly broken your nose. Mean, Ezra accuses. And I'm not talking about the song. She splashes him in the face. He narrows his eyes. Just for that, I'm asking Tristan to play the serial dating song. I'll kill you, Sabine replies. He ignores her. Hey, Tristan, do you take music requests? A pause, and then, no, let me sleep. It's a shame we missed seeing the kids, Fen remarks to Countess Wren when she and her son return to Mandalore. Yes, they wanted to invite you to the wedding, but knew you had important work here, so... Wedding? Yelps Bo, before Fen can even react. Not your daughter and the Jedi boy. They didn't. They absolutely did, Fen thinks. Of course they did. I leave them unsupervised for 2 days. And they didn't even invite me. Well, they had been courting for some time. Ursa shrugs. I would have preferred a Mandalorian son-in-law, of course, but my daughter has had so much taken from her. The least I could do was to let her be with the man she loved. Fen hasn't seen Bo this frantic since she was 17, and a count twice her age had just proposed. She darts forward, gripping Ursa by the shoulders. Ursa, I'm begging you. Tell me this is a joke. She gasps, green eyes huge with panic. I've seen the chaos Jetty-Mando hybrids cause, and trust me, you do not want a grandbaby like that. No joke, Bo, Ursa says, bemused. Though I suppose we won't know if there are any of those Jetty-Mando hybrids on the way for a few months. Tristan makes a horrified gurgling noise beneath his helmet and stares off into the distance, like he's trying not to think about the implications of that. Fen feels it his duty to speak up and alleviate Bo's worries and Tristan's horror. I'm fairly confident that nothing happened between them. It's true that they were courting, but I doubt they would have married this soon without the pressure on Sabine from other clans to consider an alliance. I think you have a few years before children become something to worry about. Bo sighs with relief, but Ursa's eyes twinkle. I think you're mistaken there, Fenrau. She wouldn't even wait for the end of the party to drag him off with her. She even forgot to register the marriage in our family's lineage book. Ah, that was the idea then, Fen realized. So they're not married, Bo says. Oh, of course they are. I put his name in there for her. I didn't want to bother her about it. Fen puts his helmet on to hide his snicker. Well, that backfired on them. Somehow, he doesn't think either of the kids will be too upset about it. The guys grin at Ezra when he rejoins their table. Even Martin and Johnner, who eat with them sometimes, look amused. Okay, what is it? Ezra asks. Nothing, Wedge snickers. We've just been hearing a funny rumor going around the base, that's all. Ezra sighs. What's Chopper said this time? Why don't you tell us, Mr. Wrenbridger? Ezra smiles nonchalantly and smugly crunches a chip before answering. Actually, it's just Wren. In Mandalorian culture, marrying into nobility means I take her last name. Though we did agree to informally hyphenate. Oh, right, he exclaims, barely keeping his innocent act together at the collection of dropped jaws and huge eyes staring at him, and he takes a little stack of small cards out of his pocket and sets them on the table, letting the overhead lights glint clearly on the silvery band around one of his fingers. Almost forgot to give these to you. We had a Mandalorian ceremony already, but we're going to have a Litholian wedding here in a week or so. Here's your invitations. Bruh, Aelin croaks hoarsely. Kids, shut your mouths. Ezra tells Martin Johnner cheerfully. No one wants to see your half-chewed food. You got married, Wedge says, like he's trying to digest this information. You got married. You got married? You, the weird guy with mind powers and minor social anxiety and a 5-hour-long Ta'Aler playlist. Hey, who told you about the playlist? Oh, got hitched to the most amazing, brilliant, cool, artistic, gorgeous woman alive. How? She likes me for my personality. Wedge violently shakes his head. No, how did you have the guts to pop the question? Ezra knows it'll get him teased, but he's honest. I didn't. She asked me. She asked you, Hobby repeats. But she was the one who was always about taking it slow, wasn't she? Yeah, well, being Mandalorian nobility means there's a lot of pressure on you to marry someone to strengthen clan alliances, Ezra explains. And neither of us could see ourselves ever being with anyone else. So she asked me if we could get married, just as an official step, to stop people from pushing her to be with someone else. Tarek, who has admittedly been working on drinking his respect women juice, which is the reason he still sits with them, but still has a few things that are just inherent to his character, smacks both hands on the table. Even your marriage was lame? I think it's romantic, Casey says. Marriages of convenience have peak pining potential. Tarek ignores Casey's optimistic remark. You haven't even kissed her yet, have you? Ezra tries. He tries. Not to feel unhappy that the answer is no. Meanwhile, Tarek is continuing in his disappointed in you ramble. Would you just make a move already? 2 years. Dating for 2 years and now you're married. And you haven't even done anything. Bro, he and Sabine built a deep emotional bond. That's doing something. Aelin puts a hand on Tarek's shoulder and lowers his voice. Look, you do realize that the fact that you won't take a page from Ezra's book and consider anything besides physical intimacy as doing anything is the reason why you're the only one at this table who's still single, right? I'm going on a first date tomorrow night. Hobby has a girlfriend. Casey is mutually pining. Wedge has a situationship. And Martin and John are kids, so they don't count. Mart and John are both bristle in annoyance. We're not kids. Child baby people. Hobby deadpans. Hey, girly. Amika beams as Sabine joins her usual table. There's this crazy rumor going around. Before she can even finish speaking, Sabine holds out one of the invitations to her. Amika's face is frozen as she slowly reaches out and takes the card. She stares at it for a long time, and when Guti finally demands to know what it says, Amika reads aloud in a daze, "You are cordially invited to the wedding to Electric Boogaloo of your local power couple, Ezra and Sabine Wren Bridger, next St. Tax Day. Bring a good attitude or a present, maybe both, but we don't really care. There will be food." Every one of the girls slowly turns their gazes up to stare at Sabine. Am Lee releases a blood-curdling to Gruda screech of joy. In the next 15 minutes, Sabine doesn't have a chance to eat even one bite of her lunch, because she's being swarmed by her giddy friends, who take turns hugging her, clapping their hands, jumping up and down, screeching, and oohing over her ring. Sabine looks over at Ezra and catches his eye. She smiles. He smiles back, and her heart beats with delight. Then she's yanked back to the moment as Goody lurches across the table and grabs her arm. "Hold on. Weren't you taking this slow?" she asks suspiciously, and all the other girls go quiet. "You just went from he kissed me on the cheek a few times to married." Sabine bites her lip, then shrugs. Other clans had started to push for a marriage alliance, and the only way to take myself off the table was to marry someone else first. So I asked him to marry me. Mostly just a formal thing, but also a next step too, I guess. So exactly the same as before? Amika grills. Not quite. She smiles to herself. We're moving his things to my room today. We actually shared my room for a few days when we were at my family's home after the wedding. It was nice having someone with me. Not lonely. You shared your room. Was there only one bed? Kanna exhales in anticipation. Yeah. Sabine finally turns her attention to her food, smiling with a laugh as she does. There was. We had fun. Joked around, fought over the blankets. Sabine lowers her voice and leans forward. And between us girls, there was a lot of snuggling too. Even in his sleep he tried to cuddle up with me. Most of the girls, except for Goody, who rolls her eyes, though even she smiles a little, but Morguna looks disappointed. "Oh," she says. "Why the long face?" Sabine asks, and Morguna sighs, then smirks wickedly. "Well, nothing happened, so I guess it doesn't matter, but I was gonna ask you if he was as smokin' hot under those layers as we all thought he was, or—" Chisika tries to clamp her hands over Kinna and Amli's montrals, which is difficult, considering she's got 2 hands, and there's 4 montrals for them to cover, and yelps, "Morguna!" Morguna, who has realized what she's implying, backpedals. No, I meant like she'd have been the only one of us here to get a close-up view of his abs. The rest of us only ever saw him from a distance, when he was doing lightsaber practice. I didn't mean— Don't finish that sentence. There's kids here. Are you serious? Kenna demands, slapping at her sister's hands. I'm 14. Silence, infant, commands Amli. She was talking about you too. Sabine purses her lips to hide the smile as the sisters start screeching at each other and does not think about that handy little zoom function in her helmet or her sketchbook full of those exact close-up views. Okay, yeah, she does think about it. A lot. Sue her. He's gorgeous. Was anyone going to tell me you were a couple? Callous demands, storming into the room and waving the card in the air. Or was I just supposed to randomly find a wedding invitation myself? Ezra lies on his back, arms folded behind his head, eyes closed in the darkness, listening to Sabine's soft breathing from the bunk above him. Their short but blissfully domestic time on Cronist had been the best nights of sleep Ezra ever had, and he didn't think it was all because he was sleeping on a real, soft, luxurious mattress, instead of on a ship's bunk or sleep mat, for the first time in 12 years. No, He's pretty sure it mostly had to do with how Sabine always seemed to find her way into his arms, and it makes him think, maybe Sabine doesn't like him, but she's definitely more of a cuddler than he thought she would be. As Ezra lies there, timing his breaths to hers and thinking about how happy he felt, he smiles. The truth is, he loves her. Ezra has always liked her, more or less, but he loves her too, and not only in that Mandalorian, just simply love way. There's something else in the way he wishes he could fill up his empty arms with her and fall asleep side by side every night for the rest of his life. He is in love with her. Only, there's a frightening side to that. He loves her with all of his heart, and he would never, never push for anything more than she wants. But it feels like every time he closes his eyes, he sees her like she was that night on Cronist. Ezra needs to stop remembering that. Oh, Force, it's hard, but he has to. What would Sabine think if she knew? Sabine cannot stop thinking about kissing his stupid face, which is a problem, because she really needs to focus right now. When Ezra said there would be dancing at the wedding, she didn't realize he meant like this. The big day is tomorrow, and right now it's nearly midnight, and they're both still awake, as he does his best to teach her a traditional dance that the couple are supposed to do. Ew. He offered to skip it, but Sabine refused. He was following her customs, even giving up his own family name. Though she insisted they share informally, the least she can do is learn a simple dance. Except, apparently she can't learn a simple dance, because she's been stomping on Ezra's toes for the last hour with no signs of improving. She can't tell him why she's so bad at it, because the truth is that her world has never felt so right as it does now, with her in his arms, and all she can think about is that he is her husband. Ezra belongs to her now, and she belongs to Ezra, and they are each other's, and there is no way in the galaxy that she could find the words to tell him how happy it makes her to be his. And, as mentioned before, she keeps thinking about kissing him, another part of why she's so distracted. Finally, he calls for a break and sits down on her bottom bunk. No, on his bunk, because this is their room now, and it's never felt more like home, and pats the spot beside him for her to sit. So, something's holding you up, he says. What does that mean? Ezra shrugs. It's like, with the Darksaber, something is blocking you from figuring it out. I'm nervous about the wedding, she offers, and doesn't mention how her mind keeps trying to wander to his lips. Ezra looks almost a little shaken. About the wedding? Do you not want to— No! She cuts him off, grabbing his hands. No, no, no. Of course I want to go ahead with it. And you have no idea how much, Sabine thinks, and swallows her hesitation. I just don't know what to expect. Lacing his fingers through hers, he pulls her down to sit next to him on the lower bunk. And I've tried to explain it as much as I can. What are you wondering about? And Sabine gets an idea. Will people expect us to kiss? She blurts out. I know that's a common wedding tradition in some places. Pink flushes his cheeks, and he reaches up to awkwardly rub the back of his neck. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Something tells her that the truth is closer to— I've been trying not to think about that. But she lets it slide. So, they will. Ezra winces a little. Probably, he confesses. But we don't have to. They probably won't care. She shakes her head and smiles at him, which seems to put him a little more at ease. But her heart is beating in her throat as she says lightly, Commit to the bit, Easy. What does that mean? People are going to expect to see us be affectionate to each other sooner or later. Sabine bumps him playfully with her shoulder. I'm fine with a little kiss at the wedding if you are. He stammers a little, stopping to clear his throat before speaking. Oh, he's nervous. I guess I'm fine with that. Is there something else? She asks, thinking, please let us be on the same page here. Please let us be on the same page here. I guess it's a little silly, but it would be. Your first kiss, she interrupts, unable to wait any longer. And she sees that she's right. It would be your first kiss. Ezra smiles, a little embarrassed, looking at the ground. Yeah, So, it's not like I have a lot of practice. Me neither. And now, the key moment. She grins and shrugs and half jokes, but more importantly, half doesn't joke. Want to give it a trial run? Trial run, he repeats blankly. Still light, still joking, still just a little serious. Sure, you know, like how we tried to be closer to each other on our own, so that we could be closer together around other people and not look awkward. Sabine chuckles. I mean, we botched the kiss at the wedding and the game is up. He's slowly seeming to get it. So, you mean kiss? Now? Us? Like practice? Sabine nods and shrugs at the same time. Think of it as a systems test. I guess. He hesitates. If you seriously want to. Yeah, kinda, Sabine says, and then taking his hand, she pulls him to his feet and turns to face him. To tell the truth, I've sometimes wondered what it's like to be kissed. And you're my husband, so the blush is definitely burning his cheeks. Well, don't count on me to give you the top-tier kissing experience, he stammers. She avoids thinking I don't want the top-tier kissing experience. I want the Ezra kissing experience. Because she's not sure how much he can sense her thoughts, but the feeling is definitely there. The moment is a little too tense, so she drops her voice to a teasing whisper. I promise I won't make fun of you if you're a bad kisser. A new spark flashes in his eyes, and he almost seems to start forwards a little bit. Oh, just for that. I'm gonna what? Sabine challenges when he breaks off. Ezra doesn't answer. They're close. Too close. Her hands reach up to slowly cup his face, and Sabine has never been so bewitched by anything as she is now, by the look in his eyes. Just for the record, she murmurs, her voice unnaturally tremulous. This is just for the bit. Before he can reply, she stretches up, ever so slightly on tiptoes, and kisses him softly on the lips. To her astonishment and delight, he doesn't freeze up. He doesn't panic. There's not even a split second of hesitation before his hands settle on her waist, and he leans in, tilting his head deeply. It's maddening. It's electric. It's tender. It's perfect. It's Ezra. It's over. Their lips separate with a soft cheek sound, and his eyes don't meet hers as he steps back until they don't touch anymore. Good enough? He rasps. Incredible. Do it again. Yeah, good enough. She agrees, battling past the urge to hurl herself into his arms and drown him in kisses, until he can't help understanding the things she's too afraid to say. Wanna try that dance? He looks relieved for the distraction and nods his head, still riding the emotional high from his kiss and feeling like she's dancing on clouds. Sabine gets it right on the next try. Cue. And at the celebration the next day, they do kiss. They really do. And she hears both of their groups of friends cheering madly. But no one is cheering more than Sabine. Well, this is a heck of a honeymoon, Sabine mutters, as Saw's ship jumps to hyperspace, with them aboard. Oh, cheer up. Ezra grins. We'll plan something better later. Maybe we'll go to Alderaan. She smiles a little. Alderaan? Sure. A cabin up in the mountains, maybe. If we want a cabin, we can just go to Crow Nest. Alderaan is fancier. Saw is staring in annoyance at the pair of them, which amuses Sabine, so she kisses Ezra on the cheek, just to annoy Saw more. This is non-negotiable, Ezra, Sabine says sharply. We're married. We're a team. Where you go, I go. If you want to help Lothal, I'm helping you. You don't get to leave me behind. Got it? The earnestness in her eyes is too much for him. He pulls her into his arms and hugs her tight. Sabine laughs softly. What's this for? You're risking a lot for me, he says, leaning back and looking into her perfect eyes. She leans in, pressing their foreheads together. I'd risk a lot more too. Besides, what could go wrong? Oh, this is interesting, Thrawn murmurs, enlarging the holo and focusing on the young Jedi. You see his hand, Governor? As a native of Lothal, you must recognize his ring. Governor Price leans in, narrowing her eyes. Is that a wedding band? Indeed. And notice his pauldron, The signet is of Clan Wren. Price looks at him in amazement. Surely you don't mean that he and Wren are... He nods his head. If you want to get to the Master Governor, Price, you must get to the apprentice first. If you want to get to the apprentice... Thrawn switches holo images again, this time to one of Wren, and he zooms in on her hand. A matching band is visible. Then I suggest you start by targeting his wife. How are you holding up? Ezra looks up from his datapad at Kanan. I should be asking you that, shouldn't I? Hera's captured. Sabine's only hurt. I know, Kanan says. But I'd expect Sabine's husband to be with her while she recovers. Ezra looks down, feeling another gut punch of guilt. It's my fault she got hurt, Kanan. No, it's the Empire's fault. You're the reason she's concussed rather than dead. Kanan sits down beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder. She wants to see you, kid. Go to her. Ezra fiddles with the cuffs of his sleeves anxiously. Kanan must know somehow. What's on your mind, Ezra? He spills the truth before he can stop himself. I love her. Husbands usually do love their wives. But she doesn't love me, Kanan. He whispers, staring at the long shadows on the ground. And I'm afraid that, if she knows how I feel, she'll be upset. He feels Kanan's hand squeeze his shoulder, and a sense of amusement from him. You might be surprised, Kanan says, smiling dryly. Sabine brushes the hanging sheet aside and steps into their makeshift medbay. Hera looks up at her, dark circles under her eyes. It's the middle of the night. Shouldn't you be asleep? She asks. I woke up, and Ezra wasn't in our room. Sabine folds her arms around herself. It feels strange to walk around in sleep clothes, but she was too weary to change into her bodysuit and armor. I thought he might be here with Kanan. Kanan, who hasn't woken up since the explosion. His burns are healing quickly with the Bacta Hera has been applying over and over, but without a medic or medroid, they just can't know how bad it is. Maybe he's healing fine. Maybe internal injuries are slowly killing him. Hera sighs painfully, holding Kanan's limp hand. Sabine, can you be honest with me? Yeah, Sabine answers. Does Ezra know that you're in love with him? The question is unexpected, and she hesitates. I mean, I married him, so... That's not an answer, Sabine. She opens her mouth and closes it again, not sure how she can answer this. But Hera doesn't need her to say anything. She must know somehow. Tell him, Sabine. She looks at her with earnest green eyes. Tell him before it's too late. Tell him before it's too late. Can she do that? Sabine looks away from Hera and bites her lip, thinking, it should be easy. But it's not. It never has been for her. People she loves have a tendency to disappear. She doesn't want to jinx this. But also, the idea of losing Ezra, losing him without ever having him at all, leaves a sick feeling in her stomach. And what if he loses her? He'll never know how much she felt for him. And even if he does find out, maybe if she leaves some message for him, she would only be breaking his heart by telling him what they could have had, if she hadn't been too scared to say so. Sabine is used to living with risks, but this is not an area where she can take chances. She loves him. She wants him. She is so afraid to lose him. She wanders around their camp, hoping to find Ezra somewhere, but he is nowhere to be found, and eventually she makes her way back to her room, only to find him lying on the bottom bunk with his back to her. Tell him, Hera's voice says, before it's too late. Sabine steps haltingly forwards, stopping beside the bunk, and she realizes his eyes are open and staring vacantly ahead. Ezra, she says, gently sitting down on the edge of the bunk. I was worried about you when you were gone. Sorry. He apologizes in a rasp. Had to get away. Get away? From me? Sabine asks before she can stop herself. He sits up, reaching out to grip her hand and look into her eyes. No, not you. Never you, Sabine. But I didn't want to wake you up. Wake me, she interrupts, squeezing his hand tightly. Next time, wake me. Words rest on the tip of her tongue, and Sabine tries to tell him. She tries, but when she wants to say I love you, she says, I don't care if you wake me up. I want to help you. I love you. She can't say it with words. Not yet. She's teetering on the brink between brave enough and petrified with fear. And he won't say it with words because he doesn't know she wants him to, but oh, when he looks at her with so much feeling in his expression, she knows it. She knows he loves her, and she loves him. You can't do much about nightmares, Ezra says. Sabine scoots a little closer to him, smiling gently. You did something about it, when I was the one who dreamed. Well, if you want to sing to me, go ahead. Ezra jokes with a sad smile. Do you want me to? Ezra looks startled by the question, but he tries to treat it like a half-hearted joke. That depends on if you can sing. I'm a woman of many talents, Sabine announces. Painting, explosives making, emotional repression, and singing. Well, go ahead then. Ezra laughs hoarsely and lies down again. On his back, staring at the ceiling, Sabine moves along the edge of the bunk to sit beside his head. She only hesitates for a second before she reaches out and brushes her hand over his hair, scratching her nails against his scalp. And nearly instantly she sees a little of the tension drain from him. Fair warning, I have about 5 songs memorized, and 3 of them are Mandalorian war chants, she says softly. What are the others? Sabine doesn't say anything. He smiles at her. One of them is the serial dating song, isn't it? She doesn't choose to answer that. She just props herself up, leaning on one hand beside him, and smiles down. Admittedly, the other song she knows is a little out of her vocal range, but it was also the one she knew best, because she had maybe listened to it quite a lot while on Cronist and thinking about Ezra. Possibly. Anyway, she runs a hand through his hair and hums the melody softly for a few moments, then sings softly. Niver kopa neriam krenak bealor, nervedikotep balkotiksh, neralit brikase, benivalguror, teadedrashar morutiik, nervadaspirov, nergai laran, neralit mandoada. Sabine tries not to look at him, at his handsome face, or sweet, kissable lips, or his absolutely chiseled arms, as she sings about dreaming of everything a Mandalorian could want. Anibalik verkopa tejatnebian nidarasuum garkare. He doesn't know what it means, as she repeats the last bit twice, wavering her voice. Sabine closes her eyes and drifts into the next verse, running her hands through his hair and making him sigh. Sa, niver kopa retridur kopanirie, balverde arwir parni, valmiet ganar lar be morei kase, chakurni karati teni, bal niver kopa solus bekotep droten, jurhae ir nibuire, anibalik verkopa tejatne bean, nidarasuum gartiere, nidarasuum garxiare, nidarasuum garxiare. She holds the last note for a time, letting it waver off into silence. It's pretty, Ezra whispers. Not what I was expecting, but I like it. What does it mean? Sabine could shrug and dismiss the question. She could make up a lie about it. But she looks down into his eyes, and then she's no longer wavering between brave and frightened, because she is brave. She's more than brave. She's reckless. She's wild with love for this wonderful man who came into her life as a boy with some stolen crates, but now he's grown up into everything she could ever wish for, and Sabine needs him, and wants him, and loves him, and she sees the same need, want, love in his gaze, too, and she breathes out, "It means I'm in love with you, Ezra." He stares at her. "Huh?" he asks. "I'm in love with you. You love me." "Yes," Sabine says, as he slowly sits up to look her in the eye. "And I'm in love with you." She stares at him. He stares at her. "Oh." "Oh?" Sabine repeats. "Is that it? I'm sorry," Ezra stammers, looking flustered. "I just wasn't expecting." "Me neither, but I had to say it. I couldn't wait." Sabine looks at him, just looks, basking in the sweet adoration in his eyes. "Could you say it back?" Ezra smiles nervously, and she wants to kiss the uncertainty out of him, but she holds back. "Do you want me to say it?" Desperately. "Then I love you, Sabine." He reaches out, cradles her face in his hand, and her heart throbs. I'm in love with you. Then Ezra pulls her in close, and she sees it in his eyes. The fire. And she closes her eyes, prepares for a burning, hot, passionate kiss. That's an explosion of 2 years' worth of repressed feelings, and gently, chastely, Ezra presses his lips to her forehead. Gentle, chaste. Forehead kisses are wonderful and tender and sweet and perfect, and she'd take 1,000 of them from him. But not now. Not when her breath has been coming faster and faster, and her arms want to hold him, and she wants to feel his heartbeat, to be his heartbeat, to consume his kisses like a starving woman. She knows he wants her too. She wants him to prove it. Sabine sets her jaw and swallows her hesitation, and leans back and looks into his eyes, sliding her body a little closer to him. Have you ever wanted to really kiss me? She asks, trying not to sound raspy. Ezra looks away quickly, breaking the gaze before she can draw him in. I guess? Once or twice? Just once or twice. Maybe a little more than that, he mumbles. Seriously, Ezra, be honest with me. If I can be honest with you after completely repressing my feelings for you for 2 years and 2 years? He repeats. 2 years? It hasn't been that long. Sabine has moved past bravery and into insanity. Yeah, it has. I admit it's only in the last few months that it's gotten really serious. But remember at the start of this all? When I told you I was just watching you doing lightsaber forms for art reference? Total lies. I was checking you out so badly. You weren't drawing me? I was drawing you. I was drawing you shirtless. I have a secret sketchbook full of drawings of you, and a lot of them involve no shirts. She gestures towards him, memorized your abs, which, force. Okay. In hindsight, I realize that is actually really creepy, and I'm so sorry. Can I see? He blurts out. The drawings? How do you keep fixating on the least relevant part of whatever I say? Ezra looks at her in frozen silence for a moment. Okay, but can I see the drawings? Sabine shoves the sketchbook into his hands with an embarrassed wince and crosses her arms as she settles herself on the end of the bunk. There. Look. He's surprised to find that he recognizes the book and flips the first page open to make sure. This is the one she used to draw him in. Meetsies. There's about 10 pages, each with a few drawings of his face. Looking variously bored, squirrely, or, when staring directly ahead at the person drawing said sketches, dreamy, and he can see improvement as they go on. Then he gets to a drawing of all of him, and he can pinpoint the exact day it was done. The proportions are off and the angle is weird, but it's very clearly him, sitting on the floor in the fresher with his knees curled up to his chest and his head dropped down and a pair of scissors in his hand and chunks of his hair covering the floor. It's a bad drawing, but the feeling of it is exactly correct. The drawing is titled, in tiny letters in the bottom corner, Aftermath. Oh, he says aloud, unintentionally. Sabine, who was looking away, looks at him, and then the picture he's stopped at, and she seems more embarrassed at him seeing her old art than she did telling him about her feelings. They're after that. Keep going. He flips ahead a few pages, and then a few more. There are rough sketches now, never finished, of him in the time between Malachor and when things got better. Ezra keeps going, and starts seeing pictures of himself in the poses of lightsaber forms, though he's wearing his jacket. Then they go down to him only wearing his shirt. Then there's another, even rougher sketch, done in a way that it's not quite possible to tell if he's wearing something or not. Another less rough sketch of him, shirtless. A surprisingly detailed drawing of him, also shirtless. He glances up at Sabine, trying not to grin, and she blushes and looks away. Ezra continues paging through the sketchbook. Some of them are little sketches of him talking, or laughing, or in a dynamic action pose. He is with Sabine in some of the drawings, or with Kanan, Hera, Zeb, or Chopper. Some drawings have titles, or just little descriptions written on them. There's one of him and Sabine walking together titled First Date, and over, and more frequently after the first date picture, are the shirtless drawings. She's good at drawing him. In fact, He thinks she may be making him look a little better than he really does. Ezra stops and blinks a few times as he comes to a very detailed picture that takes up the whole page. Oh my force, I can't believe Sabine drew this. There is a lot he could say about that picture, but suffice to say, they are kissing passionately, and he is still not wearing a shirt. Raising his eyebrows a little at the picture, he turns the page. There are a few absent-minded doodles of him here and there, and a few sketches, and then a drawing of them fighting back to back again, and then, he turns one more page, and his breath is taken away. He can't read force memories from things. Psychome something, Kanan had called it. But he doesn't need to feel the sweet, tender feeling of love pouring from this picture. It's them. Just them. Sleeping. Side by side. Holding hands. My Jedi and I, she called it. And he doesn't doubt any more. He slowly closes the sketchbook and sets it reverently aside, then looks up at her. You really are in love with me, aren't you? Hopelessly, Sabine confirms. You're not mad, are you? About the drawings? Of course not. Are you kidding me? Ezra exclaims. I'm relieved. Relieved, Sabine repeats, looking confused. He meets her eyes and smiles sheepishly. Sabine, I've been so in love with you for so long, and that was bad enough. But you were just killing me on Cronist with those short shorts and tiny shirt thing, and the way you were cuddling up to me, and I was going crazy trying not to think about you like that, because I knew you hated it, and I didn't want to be like that. But it turns out you're out here with 50+ drawings of me half naked, and Ezra laughs. He can't help it. I'm so relieved I'm not the only one. Ezra, she says, a slow smile spreading across her face. Why do you think I was showing off so much skin in the dead of winter if I didn't want you to check me out? He smiles back at her and confesses his own secret. Why do you think I completely stopped wearing shirts for doing lightsaber forms? If it wasn't so you'd keep drawing me. Sabine stares at him in shock. Then she starts to laugh, and he starts to laugh. And then his arms are full of her, and she's holding him tight, with her forehead pressed to his, and he slides an arm under her legs and pulls her into his lap so they can hold each other close. And this time, when their lips meet, there are no secrets or excuses and nothing to hide behind. They kiss because they want to, and they know they want to. Their kisses are slow and sweet because they treasure each other. Their kisses are full and earnest because they love each other. Their kisses are fiery and passionate because they need each other. Ezra holds his wife in his arms and kisses her with every feeling in his heart. It's all the things he's been too afraid to wish for. And he knows her in every way. Hera sits and waits. Kanan doesn't move. His hand is motionless and limp as she holds it, and she prays to all her gods that something will happen. Time passes slowly. The moons travel across the night sky. A ship arrives. Ketsu Onyo gives Hera a sympathetic nod as she passes by the makeshift medbay. Another ship arrives. Hondo sits with Hera for a while, in remarkable silence. All he says is that he knows Kanan will wake up. Hera knows it's just optimism. They have no real medic here, so Hera has been watching over Kanan and smearing a little more Bacta on the healing burns every now and then, unable to do anything for any possible internal injuries that could be slowly killing him. The moons are setting on the other side of the cliffs when Hera feels something. It's her imagination. It has to be. But no, Kanan's hand twitches again. His brow puckers. Kanan? She whispers, heart pounding. A long moment of silence, and then, taught Ezra, better shielding than this. It's a soft mumble, barely anything, and it doesn't make sense. But it's enough to rip a breathless gasp from Hera as she clutches his hand. Love? Hera asks, suspended, waiting for an answer. Slowly, his eyes falter open. They are crystal blue. What happened? Every tense moment of waiting and fear snaps like a spring that's been coiled too tight, and Hera breaks down into sobs of relief. Kanan's hand brushes away her tears, and Hera grabs onto it, holding it tight, feeling him here, safe, alive. behind them, the sun peeks over the horizon, and another dawn breaks. Ketsu owes Sabine one, so when she gets a message asking for help on Lothal, she goes. Now if only she could actually find Sabine. She's wandered around the base, checked the ghost twice. Nobody answered when she knocked on Sabine's door, even though Syndulla said that's where she'd be. And there's still no sign of the girl. Ketsu gives up, catches a few hours of sleep, and when morning comes, she decides to check one more time to see if Sabine's in her room and sleeping. Sabine's not a heavy sleeper, but there's a chance she didn't hear Ketsu knocking repeatedly and loudly and yelling her name. Maybe. Sabine still uses the same old door code as always, which makes it very easy to get the door open, and Ketsu sees that she is lying on her upper bunk, asleep. She's about to holler, "Rise and shine, little sister," when there's a rustle, a sleepy grumble, and someone sits up behind Sabine. There's a long pause. "What?" hisses Ketsu. "The Criff? The Jedi boy, who is definitely not a boy anymore. His arms are absolutely sculpted, and Ketsu can only imagine what he looks like under that t-shirt. No wonder Sabine is apparently having some kind of fling with him, looks at her with wide eyes, and holds a finger up to his lips, shushing her. "I'm surprised to see you here," Ketsu says in a loud whisper. Carefully, he climbs over the sleeping girl and silently hops down to the floor. He goes over to Ketsu so they can talk quietly. "And I'm surprised to see you," he replies. "I didn't think you were going to come." "Well, I did," Ketsu answers, not willing to let him change the subject. "You and Sabine, huh?" He blushes a little. "Yeah, me and Sabine." Ketsu doesn't care if he's embarrassed. She needs to know details. As far as she's aware, Sabine's never been interested in anyone before. "A thing or a fling?" He looks amused. "Ketsu, I'm her husband." "What?" "Kanan." Kanan pries his eyes open and sees the blurry, indistinct figures of the kids running towards him. They're still in their sleep clothes. It's early in the morning, and Hera jumps as their shouts wake her up, sitting up groggily in the seat beside Kanan's cot. Kanan chuckles as Ezra and Sabine stumble to a stop beside him, both talking at once. He feels a hand in his, and then Ezra is kneeling down beside the cot, his voice choked up as he half sobs incoherent words. "Kid," Kanan rasps, pulling his hand away and lifting his arm to give Ezra's hair a fatherly ruffle. "I'm okay. I'm not going anywhere." Hera has stood up, and she goes over and puts an arm around Sabine. They talk in hushed voices. "Hey," Kanan turns his attention back to Ezra. "You seem happy." "Of course I'm happy." Ezra half laughs, still tearful with emotion. "My dad figure is alive, and my wife's in love with me. Why shouldn't I be happy? Sounds like there were a few developments while I was out of commission." Kanan chuckles. "Wanna fill me in?" Ezra clears his throat nervously. Sabine is in love with me? And told me? That's pretty much it." "That's it?" Kanan repeats. "Kid, your shields were spilling feelings all over the place. Wanna tell me the truth?" Even with his damaged eyes, Kanan can see the blush on Ezra's face. We sort of kissed. A little. A lot. But that's all." "Really?" "Uh-huh. Really?" Ezra insists earnestly, and Kanan decides to drop it as Sabine and Hera rejoin them. They talk a bit, and finally the kids agree to leave and get some breakfast. Hera asks them to bring her a few things, and Kanan throws in a request as well. The pair leaves, and Hera sits back down at Kanan's side. They are silent for a moment. Hera clears her throat. "Did Ezra say nothing happened?" "Said they kissed." Hera snorts. "That's more than I got out of Sabine." "I'm not surprised." Kanan sighs, closing his eyes and resting them. Being able to see, even if not very well, is a hard adjustment. They are silent for another moment and listen to the sounds of the camp stirring for the morning. "We know they're lying, right?" Hera asks. Kanan laughs wryly. "I'm half blind, and even I saw it. Do we tell Ezra?" He'd die of embarrassment. Hera pats his hand. Fathers embarrass their children. It's what they do. "Well, I think," Kanan says, that you should tell Sabine to tell Ezra to pull his collar up." "Your trouble, love," Hera says sentimentally, as the kids appear carrying several plates. Breakfast smells good." Food is passed around, and Kanan notices a strange change in Hera's presence as she takes her plate. Ezra must notice too, because he asks, "Hera, is something wrong?" "I'm fine," she says weakly. "It's just, breakfast is—" Hera cuts off with a gagging sound, and her plate crashes to the ground as she stumbles to her feet and runs out of the room. Zeb loves happy endings. The Empire is gone. Thrawn got purgiled. Everyone is safe and home and alive. Now if only the rest of the crew would stop acting so weird. Hera has been nervous around Kanan. Kanan is constantly staring at things and blinking rapidly, like he can't believe he's seeing. And the kids spend half the time staring lovingly into each other's eyes, and half the time blushing and giggling and trying not to look at each other. Zeb does not like romance, but he finally gets some peace and quiet. Hera's asked Kanan if she can talk with him, and they're locked up in her room. And Sabine dragged Ezra into her room to have a discussion, and Zeb is left to chat with Callus and Rex like normal guys. Said chat lasts for maybe a minute before it's interrupted. From down the hall Zeb hears, yelled, in perfect panicked unison by both Kanan and Ezra, Chapter 3, in which the bit is pretending like they know what they're doing. "You're what?" Sabine looks at the floor. "Pregnant? I'm pregnant." Sabine expected him to be shocked, but she'd hoped he would be happy too. Happy for her, happy for them, happy for the baby. Oh, stars. That was a weird thought. The baby. Their baby. But Ezra just looks blank. "I'm surprised too, Ezra," she says, trying to keep her voice from trembling as she anxiously wraps her arms around herself. "I wasn't expecting this either. I know you're probably not thrilled. It's a lot of responsibility. I'm sorry, Sabine," he whispers, cutting her off. She looks up at him, and he steps closer, tugging her into his arms and holding her close. "Don't apologize." Sabine ducks her head, hiding her face against his chest, and she feels him press a kiss to her hair. Ezra falters. "I don't really know what to say." She shifts closer into his arms and rests her cheek on his shoulder. "Are you upset?" "Of course not," he exclaims, stepping a little bit back and putting his hands on her shoulders. "I'm not upset, Sabine. I swear I'm not." Ezra looks deep into her eyes, and his own gaze is full of love. She never used to imagine he would look at her like that, unashamedly adoring, without any reason to hide what he feels. Ezra had confided in her, a while ago, that the old Jedi had rules against relationships like theirs. At the time, Sabine thought it was ridiculous. Now it's starting to make sense. It's a good thing that he's the one with the Jedi powers, and not her, because sometimes she thinks she could burn the galaxy down for the love in his eyes, and a kiss from his lips. He whispers, voice cracking, and he tugs her into his arms again. "I'm kind of terrified." "I know." Sabine sighs, sinking into the hug. Parenthood is a scary thought. He laughs, still sounding a little shaky. "No, I meant telling Kanan and Hera. They're gonna flip out. 20 credits says we'll get a lecture about irresponsibility," she mumbles into his jacket. He chuckles. "I know better than to accept a bet like that. Kanan and Hera have agreed to tell the others that evening. Now that they're taking some time off from active rebellion work, they've formed a habit of all eating together once a day. Hera, Kanan, and Zeb take turns making the food. Sabine always puts Mandalorian spices on everything, and it's like eating solid fire. And Ezra's days of living on the streets have made his motto, if it won't make you vomit on the spot, it's edible. So neither of them are allowed to cook for anyone besides themselves. Today is Zeb's day to cook, which means barbecue. Hera is picking at her food. Her presence is full of unease. And, if Kanan's damaged, blurred sight doesn't mislead him, she's looking a little greener than usual. Kanan still can't believe he didn't put 2 and 2 together and get baby makes 3 a few weeks ago. Oh, come to think of it, The kids are acting kind of weird, too. Their presences are on edge. Kanan really wants this announcement to be happy, and if something's bugging the kids, he'd like to get that over with, so he and Hera can give the good news. "What's on your minds, you two?" Kanan asks. The orangish blur that makes up Ezra in Kanan's sight jumps in surprise and yelps nothing. At the same moment that Sabine blurts out, "I'm pregnant." Everyone freezes. Sabine claps her hands over her mouth like she could take the words back. "That's not funny," Hera says, her presence growing suspicious. But Kanan reaches out with the force, searching for a light within a light and finding it in Sabine's presence. "She's not joking," Kanan tells her. Hera flounders for something to say, and eventually her presence goes from bewilderment to a kind of panic masked by sternness. "We are going to be having a serious discussion," she says, "about responsibility." "So," sighs Kanan, sitting down beside Ezra. "So," says Ezra, lying on his back in the Lothal grasses and staring up at the sky. He doesn't smile at Kanan. Honestly, Ezra's annoyed. Dinner had been awful. Zeb had stomped out of the room proclaiming that it wasn't his mess. And that left Kanan and Hera, who totally flipped out and lectured them about irresponsible behavior. And when Sabine pointed out that, technically, Hera had been the one who got the ball rolling on the whole pre-baby sequence of events, by encouraging Sabine to confess her feelings in an emotionally charged, high-stress, looming possibility of death situation where long-term consequences were the last thing on anyone's mind, Hera just said that was no excuse. If you asked Ezra, that was definitely an excuse. It was a great excuse. "We're happy for you," Kanan says finally. Ezra rolls his eyes. "Yeah, right. Really, Ezra, we are." Sure didn't sound like it. "I mean, yeah, we're a little exasperated," Kanan admitted. "But you're like our kid. You and Sabine both are. It's natural to freak out a little. We were freaking out enough already," Ezra points out. "It would have been nice to hear a congratulations before you went off on us." "I know," Kanan says, then pauses for a moment. "Congratulations, Ezra. From both of us. And I do mean that." Ezra can sense his sincerity, and he smiles a little and sits up. "Thanks." For a minute, neither of them say anything. Then Kanan laughs a little. "Korabst. 34 years old is too young to be a grandfather. You can be the fun uncle," Ezra offers. "But weren't you calling me your father figure just a few weeks ago?" Ezra raises an eyebrow. "Kanan, considering that your son figure and your daughter figure are married to each other and expecting a child, we probably shouldn't try and subscribe to a rigid traditional family structure." "Okay, you have a point. Fun uncle it is." Kanan watches the sunset for a while, then speaks again. "Picked out a baby name yet?" "Not really," Ezra says. "She told me this afternoon. It's not like we've had a lot of time to think." "Yeah, I guess not." Kanan takes a long breath and then sighs deeply. "Look, if it makes you feel any better, the reason Hera and I said all that to you is because it's what we'd been saying to ourselves first." "Huh?" Ezra asks. "Hera's pregnant." There's a gasp from behind them, and they both turn around to see Zeb, standing there, a horrified look on his face. After a second, Zeb snarls something about too many human cubs and stomps off, leaving Ezra to digest Kanan's announcement. He's not sure how to react to this. So, he settles on eventually. "Am I the fun uncle or the cool older brother?" Someone knocks on the door to Sabine's room. "If you're not Ezra, go away," she calls out. "Sabine, it's me," Hera says. Sabine huffs, choosing not to respond. "Can I talk to you?" "Fine," she mutters. Hera steps into the room, her arms crossed casually. "I just wanted to say, Kanan and I are happy for you." "Really?" Sabine demands. "Because it sounded like you were pretty disappointed." "We were freaked out," Hera admits. "We were freaked out over our own thing before you dropped that bomb, and then we freaked out even more." Sabine frowns over that. "What do you mean? What were you freaked out about?" Hera, who is staring very fixedly at a paint splatter on the floor and not making eye contact, mutters, "Let's just say, we're in the same predicament." It takes a moment for Sabine to realize what she means, and when she does, she narrows her eyes at her, scowling. "We are going to have a serious discussion," she says, mimicking Hera's voice. "About responsibility." Hera just laughs. "Yeah, I deserved that." Alexander is just walking along, minding his own business, when a giant furry hand grabs him by the collar and yanks him around the corner. It's Zeb. He looks extremely panicked. Hypothetically, he whispers, "How many human cubs are in a litter?" Alexander stares at him. "I'm sorry, what? When humans have cubs, how many are there usually? 3? 4? Human babies are big. It can't be more than 4, right? Humans usually only have one child at a time," Alexander says, deciding it's best to answer the question and then find out what's going on. "Sometimes more. 2, occasionally 3. But that's not common. Why?" He looks overwhelmed with relief. "Just 1. Oh, praise the Ashla. I thought we were going to have 2 full litters of human cubs running around the ghost." "Ah, this must be about Cinderella then. Humans actually can't run as infants," Alexander says, then does a double take. "Wait, did you say 2? Ezra never thought the old comm tower could feel so much like home as it does right now, with touches of color just beginning to decorate the walls, and an extra set of dishes in the cupboard and 2 pillows on the bunk." He sits on the balcony, staring out. The skies have already begun to clear, and the sunset's colors are beautiful through the light fog. They'll be even more beautiful as time goes by. But the peace is shattered as Sabine lets out a strangled cry from inside the tower, and he scrambles to his feet, briefly wincing at the soreness in his limbs from the work they've been doing repairing Lothal. "What is it? Is everything okay?" he demands, rushing into the comm tower. Sabine is half sitting on the bunk, a blanket thrown back. She'd been taking a nap. Her hair is tousled and her eyes are wild as she pants for breath. "Sabine," he repeats, moving to sit on the side of the bunk. "What's going on?" She closes her eyes and leans into him with a sigh, the tenseness leaving her body. "It was just a dream," she says after a second, as he wraps his arms around her. "Just a dream." She's been having those lately. Every night it feels like. Ezra doesn't want to pressure her for information, but that night, when they're nestled together in the bunk and she cries out in her sleep, he reaches through the force for her presence to soothe her. He doesn't try to peer into her thoughts. The images crash into his mind so forcefully he can't stop them. Ezra sees flashes of fire and blaster bolts and feels the rumble of falling bombs and smells burned flesh. She wakes up with a gasp, and somehow she must know that he's seen her dream too. "Is that what you see? Every night?" Ezra whispers, tucking the blankets over her as she shuts her eyes tightly, hiding her face in her pillow. "Yeah," Sabine answers. "It's nothing. Just a nightmare." No," Ezra corrects, a little bewildered by his own idea, but knowing that it's absolutely true. It's a vision." Bo-Katan smacks both hands down on the conference table, staring at Ursa. "How did you know?" Ursa crosses her arms. "You've confirmed it then. I sent off scout patrols. They saw the Imperial attack force beginning to gather, completely cloaked from all our sensors. We caught them early, and they don't know we saw them. So we have the element of surprise. I've got a team organized to handle it. And now I want to know," Bo-Katan says, "how did you know?" "Sabine had a force vision," Ursa answers. "I received a call from her to warn me about it." "Sabine had a force vision?" Bo-Katan repeats. "But she's not force-sensitive." Ursa is apparently becoming apathetic to weirdness. Bo-Katan has heard that tends to happen when one spends more than 3 or 4 days around Jedi, because she shrugs. Apparently she is. But Sabine is not. Bo-Katan knows she's not. All advanced-level Imperial Academy students are tested for force sensitivity. Some kind of blood test, Bo-Katan recalls. If Sabine was force-sensitive, the Empire would have known. Of course, there's another perfectly simple explanation for this so-called force vision. It's the same explanation for why Bo-Katan's older sister had a couple months where she could chuck stuff across the room without touching it. Bo-Katan stands up and walks out of the room without a word. She is going to blow up that Imperial fleet, and then she's going to have words with Fen Rao. Either he's a liar or an idiot. Because clearly, that fake marriage between Sabine and the Jedi wasn't fake for long. Don't worry, Lady Kryze, Bo-Katan mocks, slumping dramatically in the seat next to Fen, wineglass cupped in the palm of her hand, with its stem between her fingers. Nothing happened between them. It'll be years before you have to worry about more corkies. Fen scowls. You don't know she's pregnant. But Bo-Katan is pretty convinced, it seems. She slaps her free hand down on the armrest of her chair, turning in her seat to glare at Fen. You said their relationship was fake. It is, he defends. I told you. I helped them pull it off. I know it was fake. So, whatever happened between them, if anything even did happen between them, it had nothing to do with me. Well, if you hadn't let them run off and get married like that, then they would have said the vows on their own, Fen argues. If they had feelings for each other, there's nothing I could have done to stop it. Just be glad they had a nice, respectable wedding. Countess Wren said she had to talk Sabine out of asking him to just run away with her. Bo-Katan side-eyes him angrily. Have you forgotten that entire side mission to Lothal? They did run away together, Fen Rao. They ran away to an Empire-occupied planet, had a nice long honeymoon, blew things up, almost died, went on adventures with weird Force wolves on romantic moonlit nights. And now I'm gonna be great, Auntie Bo. Fen sighs, propping his chin in his hand as Bo-Katan takes a long sip of her wine. I still fail to see how it's my fault. You could have not enabled them in fake dating. You know how well that always ends. He ignores the pointed jab in favor of arguing more. How was I supposed to know they'd take it this far? Don't care, Bo-Katan mutters. I'm still gonna blame you. Fen rolls his eyes. Of course. Just like you blamed me for not running off to join Death Watch with you. Oh, would you get over that? I'm just saying, I didn't spend my early 20s as part of a terrorist group. Sabine's hair seems even softer than usual, as Ezra gently brushes her bangs back out of her face. She's sound asleep. It's close to midnight now, and she's been out cold for a good hour at least. But he can't sleep. There's something bothering him. It lurks on the edge of his consciousness, just out of his reach, and keeps him from a good night's rest. So he lies here, his eyes adjusted to the near darkness, watching Sabine's peaceful sleep and worrying, being Sabine's husband, being the father of her child. Those are jobs for someone who knows what he's doing. Ezra's not that person. He's completely out of his depth. He's scared. He tries to gather a sense of peace, but it eludes him just like sleep does, and he sighs, hoping it will calm him. He softly slides his hand down to rest on Sabine's side, his thumb brushing her stomach. Closing his eyes, he reaches out through the Force for the gentle glimmers of the baby's presence. Hi, baby, he breathes out, ducking his head and speaking in a dry whisper, softly enough that it won't disturb Sabine. He tries to sound reassuring. Maybe it's just to reassure himself. It's your dad. The baby's presence doesn't respond to the words, but it threads lightly through his own senses. It feels similar to connecting with a very small animal. There's no real consciousness, but there is life, and life reacts to life. You're pretty bright, he murmurs, absently tracing his thumb back and forth along Sabine's stomach, skin that is just beginning to grow taut. But you don't need to worry about that. The galaxy is already getting safer. We'll keep you tucked away nice and cozy on Lothal. The tiny presence tugs at him, and his eyes sting with a bursting happiness, because the presence feels like him. Dropping his voice to an even softer, confidential whisper, he goes on. You take it easy on your mom, okay? She's got to carry you around for a while, and you're going to get bigger and bigger until it's kind of scary that you fit in there at all. So be nice. No kicking around too much. He drifts deeper into the Force, letting his presence and Sabine's and the baby's all mixed together. And take it easy on me too, he adds, a little bit joking and a little bit serious. Because I have no clue how to raise a kid, and I'm afraid I'll just mess it all up, or that I'll be useless, or he trails off, feeling the fear, forgotten for a time, creeping back. It's his baby. That's a terrifying thought. Sabine shifts in her sleep, snuggling closer to him, and he straightens out a little, letting her nestle into his chest. He presses a kiss to her forehead, glad that the visions plaguing her have left, and that she at least is getting her sleep. Force knows, soon enough, neither of them will be getting much sleep at all. Sabine sprints through the grasses, following the sound of the humming blade. "Ezra!" she calls out to the lone figure in the wide plains ahead of her. He's going through lightsaber forms in the peaceful landscape in the usual minimal outfit. But she doesn't take the time to make her usual covert observations. She has important news. And besides, it's not like this is her only chance to check him out anymore. Ezra turns and sees her, and breaks into a huge grin. He deactivates the lightsaber, hanging it from his belt, just in time for her to throw her arms around his neck, and let him catch her up around the middle and spin her around once. Before she can speak, he's pulled her in for a deep, tender kiss. She lets herself enjoy his attentions for a moment, then pulls away. "I have some bad news," she says. Immediately, she feels him tense as his eyes go wide with fear. He sets her down and takes a little step away, though he still keeps his hands on her sides. Baby is fine," Sabine reassures. "I got a call from Mandalore. Now that the fight for Lothal is over, Mother wants me to come home. There's been a battle over Mandalore, and the Imperials have been defeated, but they'll come back, and my family is regrouping on Crownest. Mother says my place is fighting by my family." Ezra looks confused and a little hesitant as he speaks. I know that Mandalorians are all about everyone being able to fight, but is it typical for pregnant women to be in active combat?" "No," Sabine says slowly, feeling a little embarrassed. "But you didn't tell her, did you?" She shakes her head. "I wasn't expecting a call from her, and it was so sudden. I had no time to think of a way to tell her. It went bad enough with Hera's little freak out. Oh, yeah, but that was mostly because she's got a baby on the way, too," Ezra points out. "I doubt your mom will have the same problem." "Let's hope so," Sabine agrees, thinking about the insanity of that possibility. Ridiculous and mildly terrifying as the idea is, it would also be pretty hilarious. Talk about weird family dynamics. "I guess we can tell her when we get there. We'll figure it out," he assures. "Oh, I have some good news too," Sabine adds, perking up. "It's about the name problem." Ezra sighs. "Sabine, I'm telling you, we can just—" She hushes him, and he laughs a little sheepishly. The name problem is something they've been debating for a couple weeks. They'd been talking about baby name traditions. It turns out both Lothal and Mandalore have them. The problem is, they don't really work together. According to Lothalian custom, the first two children are named after one person from each side of the parents' families. By this tradition, their baby would be named after one of Ezra's relatives. But in Mandalorian culture, naming a child after a close relative is a huge taboo. There's always the chance that that relative could die, or that they're already dead, and Mandalorians repeat the names of their dead family and friends in their remembrances. A ritual that starts by saying the phrase, "I'm still alive, but you are dead." No one wants to say their child's name right after saying that. It wouldn't be a problem if Ezra knew the names of any family members that he wasn't close to, but his parents' names are the only names he knows. When they realized this conflict, the argument started. Sabine insisted that since he wasn't Mandalorian and didn't say remembrances, it didn't really count, so they could follow his custom. And Ezra stubbornly maintained that it did count, and they should just skip him and name the child after someone from Sabine's family. Neither of them had budged on the issue. They'd tried to find some kind of record of Ezra's extended family, somewhere, but so far it looked like no record had been kept. But now, I solved the problem," Sabine says. "We can follow both traditions." "Really? You found a family record?" Ezra asks, lighting up, but she shakes her head, hoping he isn't too disappointed by that. "Please? Not really, but we can still name the baby after someone from your family." Sabine says. Look! She holds up her bracer and pushes a button, projecting a list of 4 names. 4 generations. Ezra leans in, reading them silently. These aren't Lothalian names, he says. They're not Lothalians, Sabine replies. They're Jedi. She hears his quick inhale as he looks up into her eyes. Jedi? This morning, I remembered that Kanan had said a Jedi lineage was like a family once, so I asked him for some of your lineage names. She falters a little. We don't have to go with one of these. I know it's not really the same, but she cuts off with a yelp of surprise as he sweeps her up in a hug. Have I ever mentioned how much I love you? He demands. Sabine laughs. Oh, only about 30 times a day. They're in their room on the Ghost, when Sabine sits bolt upright in the middle of the night with a loud curse. Watch the language, Ezra mumbles from the lower bunk. Normally, she would at least acknowledge his sleepy attempt to get her to reform her vocabulary before they have an impressionable young infant on their hands. But at this moment, she has other things on her mind. In fact, she curses again as she jumps down from the bunk and yanks open a drawer, rummaging for her comlink. What's the problem? Ezra yawns, sitting up sleepily and rubbing his eyes. We didn't put your name in the lineage book, Sabine hisses frantically. Where is the stupid comlink? And the problem is, Sabine whirls to stare at him. Taking care of children is really, really important to Mandalorians. And if a couple has kids without making a commitment to each other to raise them, they're considered really irresponsible. But we did make the commitment, Ezra points out. We said the vows. Can't we just put my name in the book when we get there? Not unless you want overblown rumors and crazy gossip going everywhere. Sabine finds the comlink in her drawer and pulls it out. But it's okay. I'll get Tristan to do it. We can forge each other's handwriting pretty well. It'll be fine. Tristan answers the comlink with a snarl. 9,000 parsecs away, and you still can't let a guy get some sleep, huh? Hush, brother. Sabine commands in a superior tone. I need you to do me a favor, so you're gonna owe me. That's unfortunate, but unavoidable. Okay, fine. I'll owe you. Now help a girl out, would you? What do you need? I forgot to put Ezra's name in our lineage book. Well, it was a busy day and I was distracted. Sabine twists her voice sweetly. Be a dear boy and forge my handwriting, won't you? First of all, I don't want to hear about your distractions, so keep the details to yourself. She can imagine the puking face Tristan is making right now. Second of all, calm down. Mom did that for you months ago. Tristan hangs up. Sabine looks over at Ezra, who is rubbing his eyes. Well, that's one problem solved. Ezra yawns. Yeah. Now all we have to worry about is your overprotective relatives murdering me. Ursa shuts the doors to her private study behind her, and then turns around. It's just her, Ulrich, their daughter, and her son-in-law. They asked to speak to her alone. All right, she says to the young couple. What is it you have to say? Ursa notices how their hands are clasped together, and that Ezra gives her daughter an encouraging look and a nod. They're both clearly very nervous. She wonders if Sabine is going to announce that she intends to abdicate. Ursa wouldn't be surprised. She's sure that it would be a relief for Sabine to forego a future of leadership and settle somewhere quietly with the man she loves. It would be hard on Tristan, though, taking on the role of heir. Sabine begins uncertainly. She gives Ezra an anxious look, and he lets go of her hand and slides his arm around her waist, pulling her close to him and whispering to her. Probably encouragement. Sabine nods a little, then looks up shyly at her mother and father. So, you're grandparents now, she whispers, a nervous smile spreading across her face as she folds her arms over her stomach. Ursa reaches up, covering her mouth with a hand as the news sinks in. Beside her, she can hear Ulrich gasp softly. Stars above. Of all the possibilities, she never would have guessed this. We don't know if it's a boy or girl, Ezra contributes, but the med droid said everything looked perfect so far, and Ursa gasps, a choked, strangled cry of happiness, and rushes forwards, pulling Sabine into her arms and hugging her tightly. A second later, she can feel Alric there too, his arms around Sabine and Ursa both. Sabine laughs, even as she protests the hug, jokingly accusing them of trying to squeeze the baby out early. Hold. When Ursa steps back, her vision is blurred with tears, but not so blurred that she doesn't notice Ezra's reaction. He stepped back away from them and is smiling, but his lips are pressed tightly, and he surreptitiously swipes at his eyes. Sabine follows her mother's gaze, turning to look over her shoulder, and she lets go of her parents and steps towards him. Ezra, are you okay? Yeah, of course. I'm just really happy, he rasps, smiling, but it's a broken smile and an obvious lie. Sabine gives him a look. Don't lie to me. What's wrong? It's nothing, really. He purses his lips, then turns away, pressing his hand to his eyes to wipe away a tear as he chokes out, I really wish I could tell my parents. Sabine has instantly pulled him into her arms, despite his wavering protests that he's fine, and he doesn't want to ruin their happy moment. But Ursa stands speechless. She'd assumed that he had simply left home by the time she met him, but now she realizes that was a rather foolish assumption. Sabine had said he had been living with their crew for just over 5 years at this point. That meant he was 14 or 15 when he joined, young enough for a Mandalorian to be on their own, if barely. But few other cultures had such a young age of adulthood. He would have been considered a boy, most likely. He ought to have been living with his parents still. As Ursa thinks this through, Alric steps forwards, lightly touching Ezra's arm and silencing his arguments against Sabine's hug. Are you an orphan, Ezra? He asks softly. His eyes flick between Alric, Ursa, and Sabine nervously. Yeah, he says. I thought you knew. A heavy pause follows, and then he sniffs and forces a laugh, wiping his eyes again. But hey, I'm okay. You know, I've got Kanan and Hera, and they're like parents to me. It's fine. Ursa's father died of a war wound before she was even born, and her mother was assassinated when Ursa was 16. Her mother's 2 best friends mentored her and worked to ensure that the late Countess's wishes, especially the ones regarding Ursa's marriage, were carried out. They were in many ways like mothers to her, and she loved them both dearly. But she remembers how it felt to see Alric, his father and mother, at her wedding, tell them of her 2 pregnancies, and know that she could not do the same with her parents. She shares a look with Alric, and she knows they are thinking the same thing. Alric slips his arm around the orphaned boy and pulls him in close, hugging him gently. He holds out his other arm to Sabine, gathering them into his arms like a mother bird. He looks at Ursa, but she hesitates. Ursa does not have an excellent track record at motherhood. She has done her best, but she has faults like everyone else. And with the Empire and ruling the clan, she has caused problems for her children's lives. But Ezra married Sabine, and by Mandalorian tradition, he is now Ursa's son, as much as Sabine is her daughter, doubly so, because his own parents are dead. She will do her best, for the sake of the mother he lost. So Ursa steps up and lightly puts her hand on his back, like she used to do on the rare occasions in Sabine's childhood, when she would come to her mother with her hurts. Their family now, after all. She almost smiles at the thought that comes to her. Tristan always did want a brother. So, Tristan is not exactly over the moon at this whole baby thing. First of all, babies are objectively gross. Sure, sometimes they're cute, but that's basically the only pro of the situation. And cons include poop and barf and loud crying. Yikes! Second, Tristan just knows he's going to be the free babysitting service, and then he's going to have to change diapers and all that other disgusting baby-related stuff. Third, mother and father are going to be obsessed over Sabine again. She's always been the one who gets all the attention. His parents are already pampering her, and the baby bump isn't even showing yet. He can only imagine how it's going to be when she starts looking like a bloated bantha. So, in conclusion, Tristan thinks he's pretty justified in sulking in his room with his music turned up loud to, drown out the sound of sibling favoritism. Someone knocks on his door. Tristan turns the music louder. Oh, Tristan, can I talk to you? It's Ezra, which Tristan is very not thrilled over. Still, he turns the music down a little bit and calls, "What do you want?" Ezra takes that as an invitation to come into the room. Tristan gives him a fraction of a glance, then goes back to staring at the opposite wall. "I'm hanging on to my sanity by a thread," Ezra announces. Tristan turns his head, staring in confusion at the sudden turn of the conversation. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to be raising a tiny, fragile human, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Ezra pauses for a second, then screeches, "I'm criffing terrified." It's so out of the blue that Tristan jumps. Ezra continues on. Now that he's let that out, he just keeps going, pacing back and forth a little, waving his arms in the air. It's not like I have a lot of practice at being a responsible adult. The whole point of my life so far has been trying not to die. I don't know how to be a parent. I barely know how to buy groceries. I'm in this weird in-between place where I'm definitely not a kid, but I don't feel like an adult either. And I'm scared to death that I'll mess this up, and that I'll be useless and immature, and that I'll let Sabine down when she needs me the most because I'm not what I need to be. It occurs to Tristan that this might be less of an, "I need to talk to you about your behavior because you've been sulking in your room for 2 days and you have to get over it" discussion, and more of an, "I need to talk to you because I'm on the verge of a total breakdown and need to vent and you look like a handy captive audience" discussion. Ezra leans back against the wall, slowly slouching to sit on the floor. "I'm such a mess," he groans. Tristan is feeling kinda bad for him now. Honestly. He stands up and walks over, awkwardly sitting down on the floor near Ezra. "That's rough, Vaude," he offers, patting him on the shoulder. "Can you keep a secret?" Ezra asks with a deep sigh. If you're about to make me your relationship counselor, then no," he huffs, sounding exhausted. "No, this is, it's just a story." "Well, maybe then," Tristan amends. Ezra leans his head back against the wall. "So, about 2 years ago, some guys bet me money that I would be too chicken to ask Sabine out, and that if I did, she'd say no. And so I asked her to go on a fake date to win the bet, and split the profits." Tristan cuts him off. "Look, I don't want to know your cutesy relationship backstory either. Just listen." He sighs again. "So, we went on a fake date, and then we kept fake dating so that we wouldn't have to deal with other people asking us out. Then the fake dating turned into a fake serious dating, and then we became fake fiancés. And then after the mission to rescue your dad, Sabine asked me to fake marry her. And then, finally, on Lothal, she told me she liked me." Ezra hides his face in his hands. "It's only been a few months. I'm not used to actually being in a relationship. It's still my knee-jerk reaction to do something stupid and goofy whenever things get too sentimental, because I've spent so long trying not to accidentally hit on her and—" Ezra breaks off abruptly, then starts laughing. "Okay," Tristan says. "Crazy story, but I don't get the joke. I hope this isn't too much information." Ezra chuckles, raising his face from his hands to stare ahead of him. "But last night, she started to make moves on me while we were in a bath together. And I forgot that that was normal now, and I panicked and—" He drops his face back into his hands with a noise of despair. Proclaimed myself Bubble King, King of the Bubbles." Tristan's interruption of, "Yeah, that's TMI" turns into a cackle. "Bubble King, King of the Bubbles," he repeats. "Yep. What did she do?" "She told me she was going to overthrow my tyrannical regime and splashed me in the face. You're perfect for each other," Tristan says with complimentary disgust. "But how am I supposed to raise a kid if that's the maturity level I'm operating at?" "I don't know. I'm 16. I'm not qualified to give advice about this." "You're 16? Tristan hesitates, a little awkwardly. Yeah. I thought you knew that." "I knew you were younger than Sabine, but not that much younger," Ezra exclaims. 16? Seriously? I thought we were the same age." That throws Tristan for a loop. "Wait, how old are you?" Now, Ezra is confusedly hesitant. 19? This has got to be the best news Tristan's heard since his friend Katkathi calmed him frantically to tell him that the new Taylor album got expanded into a double release. "You're younger than Sabine." You thought I was older? I thought you were like 24, Tristan squawks. As hilarious as this is, now he's feeling even worse for the poor guy. When he thought his brother-in-law was in his 20s, he just thought he was kind of overreacting, but holy crap. Does being 19 technically make Ezra a teen dad? Wow, this guy really needs moral support. Not from Tristan, obviously. Tristan doesn't do moral support. That's someone else's problem. I told you, Bo-Katan hollers triumphantly as soon as Wren ends the holocall delivering the news. Fen sighs in resignation, leaning against the side of the imposing throne Bo-Katan has taken to sitting in whenever she has to take a holocall. You'll be bringing this up for the rest of our lives, won't you? She smiles at him, tight-lipped and smug. Well, if you hadn't been so petty about the Death Watch thing. Fen mutters unpleasant things under his breath. Lothal is quickly becoming a safe stop on rebel supply lines, and things are busy over the next few months. The Ghost crew, minus Zeb, who has temporarily joined a different crew. He said it was because he was of more use there, but Sabine knows he's just trying to avoid the baby situation in its entirety, is staying on Lothal and help the rebellion from there until the babies were born. Hera's pregnancy is going great so far. She hasn't shown any randomly manifesting force abilities, but Kanan and Ezra have co-theorized that Sabine is just naturally more force-inclined, something about a higher Midi-Huzi-Wetsit count. Sabine, on the other hand, is having some issues. No matter which Medroid she sees, none of them have been able to give them a scan of the baby. Ezra thinks maybe the force is obscuring some of its sensors somehow. Sabine knows how anxious it's making him, not being able to get a medical reading on the baby, but she has bigger worries. She's dreaming again. Not all the dreams are bad ones. Some are good. She sees a distant future, with a feeling of peace and joy. She sees a boy with green hair, Hera's baby, grown up. She sees Ezra and a man she doesn't know, instructing a group of children in lightsaber forms. She sees a boy with Ezra's eyes and Ezra's smile, laughing and twirling around in the moonlight with a girl so pale she could be a ghost. She sees Ezra, looking barely older than he is now, holding a skinny, dirty little child in one arms as he wields his lightsaber in his free hand, and she knows he has rescued the child from something awful. Those dreams are good dreams, and if they're visions, she'll gladly take the future they're promising. She tells Ezra about them, and he's cautiously optimistic in believing in them. But there's the other dream. It's different from her dreams about Mandalore, or the dreams she's having now. More hazy and obscured, and only on occasion. In this dream, she's usually alone, on an unfamiliar ship. Sometimes there's others there, people she doesn't recognize. But in her dream, she knows she can trust them. She sees other things too. Pinkish gold sunsets, smothered in wispy clouds and white-paneled walls. The same friendly faces, turned anxious, on edge, like something is looming, and pain in her stomach that deepens and deepens. Worst of all, she sees a masked shadow, made up of darkness and hatred. Sigh. It is a shadow that she recognizes. Sabine hasn't told Ezra yet about this dream. She doesn't want to believe it's a vision, and she knows deep down that he'll say it is. But more than that, she doesn't want to frighten him with the things she is dreaming, because as hazy as this dream is, she knows enough of what she's seeing, and what she's not seeing, to give her chills. She sees the Sith, hunting her child. She does not see Ezra. Garaseb Aurelios is having difficulties. When he requested a temporary transfer, he said it was to stay in the action, but honestly it was mostly to avoid potential encounters with magic human cubs. So of course, whoever was in charge of assigning him to another crew put him on one with 8 kids. From youngest to oldest, there's Estrella, the baby, and Jay and Taya, the twins, and Alelia and Sisindria and Daisy, the triplets, and Tilly, the apprentice, and Kata, the self-proclaimed master of miscreants, commander of the Rascal Brigade, and troublemaker-in-chief. And every single one of them is force-sensitive. Zeb regrets everything. The kids are nice and all, but they have 3 times as much energy as the adults and they're exhausting to be around. Also, the triplets have decided it's funny to create some kind of mental link with each other, and do everything in perfect unison, including talking. It's incredibly creepy. Zeb is beginning to think that someone in Rebel Command has a very evil sense of humor. Or maybe the universe just hates him. As much as Ezra wants to stay on Lothal where it's safe, he can tell that Sabine is going a little stir-crazy. So when a scheduling mix-up means a whole load of cargo is stuck on Lothal there without a ship to move it, he suggests that they all, Kanan, Hera, and Chopper included, take a trip and bring it to the Rebel base. They might not see Zeb again for a long time after this. It'll be a break from the monotony. And for Ezra and Sabine, it means the chance to tell their friends the big news. Just for the fun of it, they don't come ahead to let anyone know that they'll be the ones bringing the supplies. They just show up, drop the things off, and then, since it's time for noon meal, casually stroll into the mess hall like they totally belong. Ezra can feel the guys' eyes on him as he and Sabine get their food, and then split up to go to their old tables. He wonders if they figured it out somehow. Sabine has definitely started to show, but with her puffy jacket, he didn't think it was noticeable. "Wow, it's great to be back. How's it going?" he says, plopping down in the empty seat. "Cold here, isn't it?" They all gape at him. "What?" he asks innocently. "You and Sabine." Hobby falters. "You looked so violently in love." Aelin fills in. Now he's the one getting weird looks. "What? I watch a lot of historical romance holos." Aelin dips 3 fries at one in his ketchup and shoves them in his mouth, mumbling defensively around them. "Can a guy enjoy a period drama without y'all being judgy?" "Well, I smell news," Tarek says, bracing one elbow on the table and grinning. "Did something happen?" Before Ezra can answer, Wedge cuts through his thoughts. "Oh hey, you gotta meet our new friends," Wedge announces, then stands up on his seat and waves. "Luke, Han, over here." A guy with sun-bleached hair and a force presence like a star turns to look at them, then taps the arm of his friend. A tall man with brown hair and a smuggler's getup, and then grins and jogs over, almost spilling his lunch off his tray. Ezra likes him immediately. "This is Luke, and that's Han. They're the heroes of the Death Star fight." "Aw, don't look at me," Han says, sitting down at the table. It's getting a little cramped, though Mart and John aren't here today, so there's that extra space. "I just shot a few ships. The kid here did the rest." Wedge plows on with his introductions. "Luke, Han, this is Ezra?" The voice is vaguely familiar, but Ezra only realizes who it is when he turns and looks over his shoulder. "Master Kenobi." "You know Ben?" Luke demands, staring at Ezra. And Luke isn't the only one who's surprised. Aelin looks ready to flip the table. The Obi-Wan and the Obi-2 know each other? Wedge, who is determined to get on with the introduction, talks louder. "Luke, Ezra is a Jedi too." "Great. More wizards," Han says. Master Kenobi pats Ezra's shoulder. "We can catch up later," he says kindly, only to let out an undignified squawk as Aelin's dad appears out of nowhere, grabs him from behind, lifts him up in a hug, and delightedly shouts, "Obi-I!" Aelin gives Ezra a grin. "I may have forgotten to mention my dad's name when I was introducing myself to Obi-Wan. I thought it would be a nice surprise." Aelin's mom has joined the two men, and now they're all talking over each other at once. Obi-Wan is giving Aelin's dad a slightly incredulous look. Ezra thinks he may be questioning Quinlan's taste in women. "Anyway," Wedge hollers over the clamor, "Luke and Han don't know the Ridger lore, so we need to fill them in." "Ridger lore?" Ezra repeats. "What's Ridger?" "It's Wren plus Bridger." Wedge looks smugly proud. "My girlfriend came up with it." "Yeah, you hear that right. I have a girlfriend now. But that's a story for later. Hobby, you made the first bet. You want to start?" "Yes, sir." Hobby jokes with a fake salute, then points across the mess hall to Sabine. "You see that girl over there? With the colorful armor? The one surrounded by her screaming friends? Wow, they're really freaking out about something." "So, see her?" Han shrugs his shoulders. "Kinda hard not to." "She's beautiful," Luke blurts out in awe. "Well, maybe Ezra doesn't like him so much after all." Luke notices Ezra's glare, and apparently he puts it all together. Sorry, just an observation. Hobby clears his throat, and Ezra leans back in his seat, wondering just how they're going to narrate this. So, the Mandalorian over there, who we've established is beautiful, is part of his crew. He's been pathetically in love with her since way before I met him, but everyone thought she didn't like him back. So, since I was jealous of his space magic, I bet him some credits that he wouldn't ask her out. Han leans back in his seat and grins. I know where this is going. If Ezra had to guess, Han did not know where this was going. We all pitched in to make the bet pretty big, Wedge continues. And he did ask her out, and she said yes. Oh, congratulations, Luke says, apparently under the impression that these are recent events. When's the date? That was 2.5 years ago. They went out once, and it was the lamest date in the galaxy. He didn't even hold her hand or anything. Tarek stage whispers. Luke and Han wince appropriately. We all thought that was the end. Wedge jumps in. It was agreed that he was never going to get a second date. But then, he and Sabine started acting weird. I was the one who figured it out. Aelin pipes up through a mouthful of space pizza. Sabine's not very emotionally open, so what happened was, she and Ezra were secretly dating. He kept saying it was nothing, but it kinda became an open secret. They were really slow burning it. Casey sighs sentimentally. Sabine wanted to take it slow, and Ezra was a gentleman, unlike certain unnamed persons named Vin, who we don't talk to anymore. And so they dated for years, and you know what? They never even kissed. But they were in love. Han looks confused, and Luke's force presence is sentimental. Then Sabine left, Hobby says, jumping in to continue the story. She stayed with her family on Mandalore for months, and we all thought that was definitely the end of Ridger. After all, there had to be a lot of attractive Mandalorian guys around to sweep her off her feet. We were low-key planning a support group for Ezra, for when he met her again in case she dumped him. Okay. Ezra did not know about that part. He's a little offended. So imagine our surprise when he goes to Mandalore to see his girlfriend, and comes back with a wife. Luke gasps. Han is slouching in his seat, apparently bored. That's right. They got married on Mandalore, all on impulse. It was a marriage of convenience. Casey interrupts. Sabine is an heiress, and there was some kind of political pressure to get married, so she married Ezra before anyone else could ask her. But they were still taking it slow, Tarek complains. You know, he kissed her for the first time at the wedding? Han looks horrified. And she actually married this guy? Yeah, we were shocked too. Before anyone can roast his romantic abilities any further, Ezra drops the bomb on the conversation. Hey, FYI, Sabine is pregnant. Silence greets the statement. You're the dad, right? Tarek asks, and Aelin immediately slaps him upside the head. Puta! When the ecstatic greetings are over, and Sabine's friends still haven't noticed the baby bump, she decides she needs to give them a few hints. So, she begins, notice anything different? They all stare at her for a bit. Nope, Chizuka says, at the same second that Gia blurts out, have you gained weight? Sabine smiles wider. 3 seconds of silent confusion go by as they try to figure out why Sabine is smiling and not offended. Then Kenna jumps up, slamming her hands on the table as she shrieks, Omigo Cher, you gonna have a baby? At least that's probably what she shrieks. It's kind of incomprehensible. Once it becomes apparent that Sabine isn't going to deny the query, the entire table promptly freaks out. Amli is clapping her hands and letting out a shrill Togruta celebration whoop. Amika and Gia are grilling Sabine with questions, but not giving time to answer them. Chizuka looks like she's on the verge of tears of joy. Amli hugs herself and all sentimentally, and Morguna throws her hands in the air and hollers, I'm gonna be an auntie. Wow, says a vaguely familiar-looking woman in a white jumpsuit with dark hair braided into a crown, approaching them with a tray in her hands. What's the party about? Am Lee grabs the woman's arm, bouncing in her seat so much that she almost spills her tray, and squeals out an explanation that's mostly just gibberish squawks of delight. Okay then. The new arrival to their table pauses, then gives Sabine a curious look. I know you, don't I? It takes Sabine a second to place her. Princess Organa? That's me. She smiles. But please, just call me Leia. All right. Leia, Sabine agrees. I'm Sabine Wren. We stole some ships from you on Lothal a few years back. Leia's eyes light up. Of course. I remember you now. You were with the Jedi. Oh, she's with the Jedi, all right. Amika giggles. Leia's brow furrows for a second, and then one eyebrow shoots up. Is she saying what I think she's saying? Sabine inclines her head with a smile and holds up her hand, showing the ring. Indeed, she is. Then, noticing that Amika looks about to explode with more questions, she decides to share the other news. Actually, I'm expecting. Leia blinks a few times, processing. A baby? She asks. No, a varactyl. Sabine deadpans, then grins. Yeah, a baby. Boy or girl? Amika bursts out, leaning forwards. We actually don't know, Sabine admits. She doesn't want to advertise the baby's force sensitivity, though, or the way it's making it impossible to get a scan of the baby. So she fibs a little. We want it to be a surprise. Gia shoots her arm up in the air, like she's in a classroom and wants to ask a question. Have you picked out a name? Sabine nods. Deppa for a girl, Caleb for a boy. Using the name Caleb is, admittedly verging close to breaking the Mandalorian taboo about naming kids after close relatives, since that's Kanan's birth name. But she and Ezra both know him as Kanan, and that's the name she'll say in her remembrances when, hopefully sometime far, far in the future, Kanan does die. Since they wouldn't say the name Caleb, she figures it wouldn't be taboo to name their kid that. When's the baby due? Is the next question fired off, this time from Morguna. About a month and a half. She gets 3 more questions simultaneously and glances up, looking across the room to try and spot Ezra. It's easy to do because every single guy at the table is rioting. Every single one, except for 2 of them, who she's never seen before. One of them is a boy with sunny gold hair and a sweet smile, and the other is a guy who she can't really see. Then he turns his head a little, and it feels like someone punched her gut. That, or the baby's kicking. She recognizes him. And, oh stars, she swivels in her seat, looking at the princess again, and then back to the man. She's seen them both. Sabine realizes she's seen them in her worst dreams. The realization barely has time to sink in before the base shakes, the lights flicker, and someone screams.